Hello, everybody, and welcome back to, for a time, might be the final episode of Coen Brothers. This one we're doing is Hail Caesar. It's 2016. Let's introduce ourselves. I'm Abe Epperson, one of your co-hosts. I'm here with... Introduce yourself.
Michael Swaim. Did you...
And
very allergic Michael Swaim. I don't know. Can you hear that I'm stuffed up, Abe?
a little bit. You're a little stuffy.
Okay, then the audience can hear. But sometimes you can only hear it in your own head, you know, and it's not really there. But yeah
there's a nasal quality, but you're all right.
I snorted snot, so you could... That's the real... Mm-hmm. But, yeah, man, what... So, you said for a time... If the Coen Brothers make another movie, are we committed to coming back and relaunching the series? We haven't talked about that.
Well, here's the thing, is they come out with movies every few years, so...
They take their time, though.
I doubt... They take their time, so I feel like we could do like a, random, a new movie. Let's do a Coen Brothers on it. But then we won't have to do it again for many years.
And I'd figure inevitably when one of them finds this podcast feed and realizes this is the most insightful, analysis of their work anyone's ever done, that they'll want to do a reunion episode. And we'll consider it.
Yeah. And they'll want to make more movies because they'll be like, we got to make these guys, put these guys to work.
We need more episodes. You know what would be amazing is to actually do an episode where we unpack a Coen Brothers movie that doesn't exist, that we amalgamate from all the tropes that we've come to learn are their bread and butter.
We could write a Coen Brothers movie, or at least like a treatment. That's for sure.
That's high praise for us. I would say we're definitely up to the task of writing a review of a Coen Brothers movie that doesn't exist.
Well, I mean, yeah, if we wrote a treatment of it and then acted like we saw the thing. But yeah, you're right. That's high praise of us.
Well, we're pretty great, so let's use our amazing abilities of insight and understanding to dive into the three spectra through which we analyze Coen Brothers films. In this case, of course, Hail Caesar. Those spectra are, for the last time, with feeling, pedagogy, diegesis. I mixed them up. It's the finale episode, and I mixed them up in order. That's diegesis, pedagogy, and what's the third one? I always forget.
How did he do that?
How did he do that? Becoming less relevant by the second, as Arrested Development does not appear to be coming back.
Yeah, that's true.
And speaking of jokes, it's a comedy. Hail Caesar, if you're watching this, if you're listening to this podcast blindly, and we're going to analyze it. So let's dive into our first spectrum, diegesis, which is the stuff that happened in the movie. Yes, Aber.
Yes,
I heard you.
That's what we're going to do. I'm going to interrupt you for a second and just say, for anyone who wants to skip the Hail Caesar portion of this podcast, at the end, Michael and Abe are going to give you the Coen picks, meaning... We're going to rank the Coen Brothers for each of us, so we'll do that if you're interested in that. And also we'll announce our next project, because obviously we can't there's no more Coen Brothers. So, anyway, that's it.
Great self-promotion. If you ordered a meatball sub but you don't like meatballs, you're welcome to pick the meatballs out and just go to the bread.
Hey, it's the last one, Michael.
But they know that. Wait, although earlier you said... So are we, if they do another one, we have to come back?
But if you're and I'm...
Do we have are we obligated to cover new Coen Brothers movies?
I don't know, man. I thought we could because it's not that hard.
No, it's a pleasure. It's a joy. But
and they only come
obligated.
out. Yeah, if you don't want to be obligated, we may or may not. Okay? You covered your ass.
Also, I'll say it here without blowing anyone's spot up per se. I know someone who knows the Coen Brothers, and I got to talk to someone who knows the Coen Brothers, and I'll just say they said that they know the Coen Brothers well, and the Coen Brothers are done and will announce their retirement soon. And if that gets me in trouble, so be it. But I heard that from being a Hollywood guy. So we'll see. On the one hand, I was heartbroken to hear that. On the other hand, I was like, okay, good. Our podcast will stand forever as the totality of the Coen Brothers output. That's
a very strange takeaway, but that's cool.
Yeah. So where were we?
Diegesis.
How do you do that? Oh, right. Diegesis. Okay.
Diegesis.
So first thing I'll say, because as people who have listened to the show know, and people who listen to Small Beans, I think, know, we're not big into just telling you if you should watch the thing or not. Like, fuck that. It's so stupid. Everything art is so subjective. We're more into telling you like what it was like for us and trying to provide insights that will enrich your experience of engaging with that piece of art should you choose to. And in this case, because it's famously not a hit Coen Brothers movie and we're ending on it, I do want to provide a quick capsule sort of review up top in the diegesis section, which is basically to say that I had the same experience with this one that I did with Intolerable Cruelty, which is, and Lady Killers for that matter, which is, in every case, they were coming off a very serious toned film that was a huge hit. And it's very clear that they decided to just have some fun and make a comedy. And I think that those ones always end up missing with the general audience because, like, after No Country, or I'm mixing up the order, but, you know, for example, or like, let's say after Fargo, how are you going to go ahead and do Intolerable Cruelty? And yet I admire that I think the Coen brothers get a bad rap when they don't take themselves seriously because they're so obviously brilliant that we want them to say important stuff. So like when I saw this movie, I left the theater feeling very disappointed and like, whatever, you know, they can't all be winners. And watching it again with a critical, detached eye for this podcast going, but is it good though? Just analyze it as a film. This is a fucking really funny, well-made movie. And it strengthened my resolve that our base assumption in this show is, well, it's a Coen Brothers movie, so it's better than 95% of other movies. That still holds. And even Lady Killers, which I was scared to watch because everyone always shat on it my whole life, I watched it and I was like, it's good, though. It's really good. It's just not as good as No Country for Old Men, but that's such a high standard.
Yeah, Inside Llewellyn Davis, which is 2013, they hadn't made something for 3 years. So in 2016, they come out with Hail Caesar, and you're like, oh, 3 years, a Coen Brothers.
Yeah,
I see why your expectation is to get almost all of the aspects of the artist in one film. You're like, it's got to have something cool and crazy like No Country. It's got to have. No, sometimes they do Burn After Reading, where it's just like, the whole point is what the fuck. It's fine.
Yes.
Let them make movies.
So with that mindset, this movie fucking tears ass. Like, it's very funny and clever and smart.
It's fucking great.
So let's get into it. Yeah. I'll do the opening volley and then take over whenever you feel like it. But
you got it.
Because it's a broad comedy, I think diegesis will be bulky and then pedagogy will be pretty simple. Man Who Wasn't There, this is not.
Right. There is some interesting stuff, though, I will say.
There's always some pedagogy, but yeah.
There's always something.
But for diegesis, it opens on a shot of Jesus, conflating Jesus with the Hollywood studio system. It's sort of this opening image that just establishes the premise, which is that this is the Coen brothers' love letter to their calling. They were put on this earth and they feel like film's the most important thing to do, and that's why they do it, and they were blessed enough to get to do it like to the fullest degree. And in a lot of ways, I think this movie is, they're like, thank you for that, and their meditation on how cool that is. So it literally opens on like religion, but our main character Eddie Mannix represents Hollywood, and he's there, and it's conflating the two. And Eddie Mannix is Josh Brolin, who ain't never not acted the shit out of any part he was given, so obviously he's great. It's hard to watch this back to back with True Grit and even realize it's the same guy. He is a chameleon type actor, and he's in the confessional booth crying, so you know it's genuine. That's the thing, is it's very important. He's not phoning it in. In fact, the priest later in the movie will be like, you confessed 27 hours ago, my son. Like, it's really too often.
Right, yeah. The priest is very like, all right, it's so late right now, man.
And also like, you're fine. You're doing fine. You're a good guy as far as I can tell. But Brolin is confessing because he lied to his wife about smoking. He says his job is so stressful that he keeps finding himself smoking even though he's trying to quit. And he feels bad because he tells his wife he quit. Then we get the voice of this narrator that's going to carry us throughout the film. Abe, I'm going to lean on you for this. Who's the voice of that narrator? It's someone really famous.
Michael Gambon.
That's Michael Gambon?
Yeah.
The thief from The Cook, the thief, his wife, and her lover? Wow.
Fucking Albus Dumbledore.
Oh, my God. I'm sorry. But I didn't have any actorly connection to Michael Gambon. Like, I had no appreciation of him as an actor until very recently when we were tasked with watching The Cook, the Thief, His Wife, and Her Lover. So that was my only understanding of who that man is. He's the second Dumbledore. That's the same guy.
It's so much shit. Have you seen, like, Layer Cake?
Dude, that's like... Now I'm imagining Dumbledore like force-feeding Ron Weasley dog shit.
Yes!
It's
that's why it's insane. He has... I don't want to even get into it because I could talk about it for too long. He's had like 3 careers. He started young, and he's had like young sexy man to like
middle-aged horrible person.
To like, yeah, he's just all over the place.
He's
had like multiple
dignified
careers.
Guy.
Yeah, exactly. And now he's narrating as if it's spoken from like God, or it's the movie.
Well, it's interesting,
but it's also the narrator of Hail Caesar, the movie within the movie. But he's also the narrator of the movie.
Michael Gambon narrates both Hail Caesar, the movie we're watching, and Hail Caesar, the movie they're making that the movie Hail Caesar we're watching is about.
Yes.
And I just want to point out, Eddie Mannix, one of his first lines is, while he's trying to explain to the cops that a starlet is not, in fact, there getting her photo taken churning butter, which I guess is scandalous. But he goes like...
It's the 50s.
He goes, no, this isn't what's her name. This isn't really her dirndl. And I appreciate the Coen Brothers so much for keeping language alive that I never would have been exposed to otherwise. I had to look it up. DIRNDL. And it's like Austin Powers saying, that's not my bag, baby. But dirndl, what a great phrase. No, that's not my dirndl.
Yeah. Or that's my dirndl.
Oh, that is my dirndl. Oh, yeah. Trip hop, Skrillex. Yeah, that's my dirndl.
That's my dirndl, baby.
But anyway, so Mannix is a fixer. Brolin is a fixer.
For Capitol Pictures.
And Capitol Pictures, which you imagine is like Columbia or Paramount analog. And the first scene we get is it's 5 a.m. A starlet the studio owns the rights to. So if you're unfamiliar, just for the young kids listening, back in the day, the system was different, and studios would own your likeness. And they would really just tell you what movie you're in next. And you don't, it's like working at a factory, but it's a movie factory.
Yeah.
It was very interesting way before we realized like, oh, we should have agents and managers and the actors should read scripts and decide what to do. It was just like,
unions.
We own you. Do this movie now. And you can't be seen smoking or you can't be seen pregnant because you're a starlet. So, it's 5 a.m. and he finds this starlet taking some sexy photos, churning butter. And he fucking slaps the shit out of her.
Yeah, he scares the photographer away because he's like, get the fuck out of here. You're doing this shit. And then he slaps her and tells her to use a fake name real quick because the police are coming.
Yeah. And
then she doesn't even get the gist of, like, he just takes care of everything. She's just there and you see how it's like kind of a predatory system, even though one of the greater points of this movie is that like we took care of you, didn't we? You know, and stuff like that. Well, no, and yeah.
Well, it's interesting. I would argue that Eddie Mannix is presented as exactly acculturated to his time, and
exactly.
Because the Coen Brothers are depicting their perception of the golden age of Hollywood, and I thought it was pretty cool actually how they resist gilding it in the way that They really are nostalgic for this time. I mean, these are the guys that made the Hudsucker Proxy. Capra movies in the golden age of Hollywood do matter to them. They're very Tarantino-ish. They're fucking film nerds, and they like classic movies. They mean it genuinely, but at the same time, they resist that human nature thing that so many of us have, where we're like, those were the good days. They're like, no, I mean, a lot of stuff sucked about it. It was racist and misogynist and shit. So Eddie Mannix is not good. He's good in that he serves film, and film is good, but they really don't embellish him or make him super sympathetic. He's a guy in the 50s, so he's diffident to his wife, and he slaps women around. Like, it's interesting that they don't gild the lily.
He's effective. He's a fixer. He goes in and he solves problems like this fixer daddy for all of us to make sure that the things, and so that the world of Capitol Pictures just keeps running. He's kind of like what a lot of us want out of a god. Weird, huh?
Who is often. Well, the deist God, which, by the way, Ben Franklin believed in, which is the idea that the clockmaker God, and the most notable iconic recurring shot in this film is Eddie Mannix's watch. And that's twofold: to show you that this movie takes place roughly in, I don't mean real time like 24 does, but I mean it takes place over a 29-hour period, which is pretty interesting because you look back and realize, holy shit, a lot of shit happened that day. And I think it also is a reference to the clockwork nature of the studio, life itself, the universe, and the God that the Coen Brothers perceive to exist. Right. Like, if there is a God,
just keep churning.
It's
like that butter.
The God's just churning the butter and seeing what comes out. Yeah.
You can tell where this is going to go in pedagogy, but let's keep going.
Okay. So it cuts from us learning, like, this is what this guy's about. He gets shit done and he feels guilty about it. What's necessary to get shit done. Then, your classic white guy. Then it cuts to an in media, or like diegetic, so to speak, shot of the film Hail Caesar. And it slowly pans out, and we realize it's Eddie Mannix watching rushes of Hail Caesar. So this is also an interesting time, because this is a time in Hollywood where the fixer, who you send to slap starlets around, also gets creative input on the film. But mainly...
Yeah, that's a weird thing. But he's like a producer, I guess, so...
It's in the interest of, they trust him to basically produce, meaning connect with people who would be interested in the film and make sure it's not going to make the studio look bad. He's not like judging the acting as much as he is judging, like, will this offend Christians? Because it's the story of Jesus Christ's life. But Jesus Christ is shown through the eyes of the Roman Empire, and if you're familiar with film history, it's clearly Spartacus. So they're making Spartacus. Hail Caesar is Spartacus.
Yes.
And I love that during the rushes he's watching, of course, not all the sequences are finished. So we get introduced to George Clooney, who's going to play our, God, I'm sorry, I can't pull his name, Kirk Douglas.
Clancy Brown? Oh, sorry.
He's playing our Kirk Douglas analog in Spartacus, which made me realize...
Baird Whitlock.
He really is our generation's Kirk Douglas. Like, they have that same pained face and shit. Yeah.
Yeah, there's a lot of analogs.
Yeah. He's a little Cary Grant, a little Kirk Douglas, but for our time. Yeah.
Definitely.
And,
definitely.
But anyway... I love that it cuts to the scene where they cut to God, like he's looking at God, and it shows the reverse shot where you said she should see God, but it's just black frame and it says divine presence to be shot, meaning like we haven't filmed this yet, but I have to believe there's some meta like joke to the idea of like we're gonna shoot God, like divine presence.
Yeah, we'll figure it out.
Shot.
We'll figure it out. It's on a timeline, but we'll figure it out. But we do find out in a few scenes that the reason is because the studio is worried about how offensive God will be, so they're holding off to shoot that sequence and many notable shots of Jesus,
right?
Just like so that no one is offended.
Don't offend the blue hairs. So indeed, the next scene is a walk and talk where the only real big takeaway is that his secretary is just as competent as him and is like his gal Friday. And he tells her, bring as many religious folks as possible, like representing as many different faiths, to a meeting so they can watch the cut and tell me what they think. She says, okay.
another really cool thing is that I know he actually solves 3 problems in that walk and talk, and it's like a minute.
He's constantly
there's a rained out
stuff.
production.
Go ahead.
There's a rained out production that he turns into a B-shot unit for another picture that needs rain. So it's like he's solving problems thinking outside of the box. It's not like he's solving a problem for one movie. He's solving like, well, if they shoot, because we have like 8 pictures going on right now, maybe he shoots just like shots of, like rain and stuff like that, or get some B shots of like hills and stuff like that with being rained on for that picture. And then also it's foreshadowing that he's going to meet Scarlett Johansson because there is a pregnant actress who's apparently causing hiccups on set.
Yeah, and I think that really is the Coens providing insight into the filmmaking process in an aspect that you and I talk about a lot that most fans who just watch movies don't appreciate. Being on set, especially for a low budget, like when we did our feature Kill Me Now, it's striking how much the skill of filmmaking is actually complex real-world problem solving in real time. And the most joyous moments that stick in your memory from feature sets are often things like, hey, remember when we needed that shot, but the crane guy couldn't show up because his Class C license expired, but we realized that we could hire local rock climbers to climb up the face of the thing with their equipment and shoot it that way. Like solving problems is filmmaking because shit always goes wrong, and it really is a key part of it. So yeah, you'll see a recurring motif of Eddie Mannix solving problems, not like, oh, what should the shot be? Yes, that's a part of filmmaking, but he's really in the shit with the problems like, oh, the actor showed up hungover and can't do the scene. Okay, well, we could shoot this boom guy from behind. He has the same haircut.
Yeah, we'll use the stunt double
like that.
Or whatever.
Yeah.
And he does it with the zest of like Paul Newman in Hudsucker Proxy, where there's a certain speed and cadence to everything he's doing.
Sure.
You don't get the sense that he's maniacal or evil behind it. He's just like, and then this happens and this happens, and then that walk and talk ends with, and now it's time for, and he's finishing his secretary's sentence, like time to call New York.
No, in fact, they go out of
because he knows that at 8 a.m. he always has a call to New York.
Yes, they go out of their way to make him as a not necessarily sympathetic because he does bad shit, but you can tell has a conscience in the societal sense. He's ridden with guilt. He wants to do all the right things, which
he's like a greater good kind of guy.
He's not like Paul Newman. He actually cares about serving something, and he feels like he's trying to do
greedy.
Good things. Yeah.
In fact, based off of how we think of Hollywood producers, when we do later in the film cut to his home with Allison Pill, it is a very it is classic suburban home. He's not in it for the money.
No.
Because he doesn't make a lot of money. He's like living in a small kitchen. Just it's very reverse of what you'd expect, and more close to, I guess, what I would expect out of 50s, where people who are solving problems like this would probably in today's day and age be given mansions. That's
right. But this guy is like,
goes.
Whatever. I'm just a regular schmo. I clock in, I clock out. I pride myself on getting the shit done. Yeah.
Doesn't defend the 50s sentiment for a lot of immoral kind of justifications, but it does paint a picture of 1950.
Yes. All right, moving us along. Then he's in his office on the phone. He's talking to Mr. Skank, who is a mysterious. They love this trope, man. He's the Wizard of Oz, essentially. He's the great man that you never even see, but the orders descend from him. He's Charlie to the angels. And
he's
basically
the rabbi in Serious Man.
Yes. He's Sid Musburger. He's wearing Hudsucker. And he says, one of our actors dropped out of our prestige picture, Merrily We Dance, which is such a funny name for a movie from this era. Merrily We Dance. There was a movie from this era called They Shoot Horses, Don't They? Like, I just love this era of titling films.
Yeah.
But so they say, take our guy Hobie Doyle and move him onto that picture. And Eddie Mannix, because he's a great functionary, briefly says he's also Waylon Smithers. That's a good touchstone, is Waylon Smithers. He says, I just need you to know that's a bad idea. Like, he basically says Hobie Doyle's not right for that part. But as soon as Mr. Skank says, well, we have no choice. We got to do that. He goes, absolutely, sir. You're right. I'll get it done. And that's the gist of that scene.
He's so well-mannered. It kind of throws you a little bit, because in a movie where everyone is so like being told what they're doing and like kind of
he's not a diva and everyone else
he's
is.
Not a diva.
Yeah.
He's not like fast talking, kind of guy who's going to like do what the stereotypical Hollywood producer, which is more of what we've been seeing, where they're like all business. He's like very well mannered. He's blue collar. He seems out of place in that old Hollywood. He's very genuine and thankful, whereas everyone else is more or less cold, fast talking, and like ruthless in a way.
Yeah.
He's also the best cowboy we've ever seen.
Oh, who,
in any
Hobie?
movie. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. So moving on, it cuts to, again, of course, a repeated motif of the film is cutting right into pitch perfect. Like, no one could do it better. It truly is remarkable. Pitch perfect impressions of films from this period that don't exist. But this is exactly what they're like if you've watched a lot of these films.
It's what they wish they were. Because the stunts and stuff are so impressive.
That's true. It's even
it's almost a circus act, and we did have those kind of pictures back then.
But I'll just say, as film nerds, you have to grant, like, on every level, the attention to detail gives film nerds, like, it makes our clits hard. Like, it's ridiculously
the choice
point.
Of the lenses, the fake backgrounds. I mean, there was a shot earlier in the opening sequence with Hail Caesar showing the movie within the movie where it's like this very ugly matte, like, but it's so, I mean, it's meant to look glorious, and I guess it does, but like to our eyes now, it's so hilarious that we got away with this kind of stuff in film. And I think the same thing goes for the Cowboy Pictures.
And I think Tarantino is going to come up frequently in this film particularly. I think it's so interesting that Once Upon a Time in Hollywood just came out and is getting so much notice, and there's so many parallels here. But it is also, and I'll get to that more in pedagogy, but all I want to say on the Tarantino front right now is that it's the same way you appreciated in Grindhouse how you're like, even the credits looked like the old credits. Like, it's just perfect. So I won't belabor it, but we cut into an example of one of Hobie, what's his last name? Dawson?
Hobie Doyle.
Hobie Doyle. One of Hobie Doyle's pictures, and he does what they call dust pictures, which we now know to just mean Western movies. And they do...
He's a dust man.
Yeah, they do shots where he is basically the Lone Ranger saving people and doing stunts on his horse Whitey. And that's all I'm going to say about that for now. We cut, unless you interrupt me. But otherwise, we cut back to, and this is where it starts getting interesting to me, because the Coen brothers are always one level more sophisticated than like a basic movie. They do this thing where they really do play with, is this footage in scene? Meaning, repeatedly throughout this movie, you're watching footage. It's like Adaptation by Charlie Kaufman. You're watching footage of, I'm sorry, Schenectady, New York, not Adaptation. You're watching footage of people on a set shooting a thing. So based on the distance the camera is away and whether you're seeing boom operators or not and what angle we're at, very sophisticated, nuanced details of film grammar are letting you know whether you're watching people doing a scene that they're doing or you're watching people on a set, but they're not filming right now, and it's a real quote-unquote scene in this movie, or you're watching like a mix of the two. And this is the first time they really fuck with you, because it cuts to Wayne Knight of Jurassic Park and Seinfeld fame, Newman, walking into frame in costume with extras in the background, framed in such a way that you first think, Wayne Knight looks suspicious. What's he doing? And then enough time passes that you go, oh, he must be acting suspicious because they're filming a scene of Hail Caesar and he's suspicious in the scene. And you see him go up to a goblet and put a packet of poison in it. And that's so silly, or like that's such a trope that you're like, that is what it is. Okay, they're filming Hail Caesar. Then the director, actually probably a second unit director, walks on and goes, why are you over here? You're supposed to be reclining, playing the liar. And you suddenly realize, no, we are watching an extra who is in costume on set really put poison in the prop goblet.
And I love that the assistant director is like, no, recline. Like, it's still got the typical Coen brothers, like like love of word choice, because like he doesn't want him to sit with the liar. He wants him to recline with the liar.
They like
and
word
then it ends with like,
repetition,
I got my eye on you. Because in this world, extras, which I think might have actually been how it used to be, but it's kind of fucked up. Extras would come up and pose for the director all en masse for like bigger scenes and stuff, and have to sit there for who knows how long. And if you moved out of place, because at any time the director and the A team, like the first team, would come in and they would start performing. So because of that, they had to like, if you had to hold a pose, you would do that for hours if, like, I don't know, the actor was gone. But because that would never happen, we're still thinking about it in terms of like modern day cultures where there's divas and stuff like that. People weren't really allowed to be a diva, or they would just be fired.
Yeah.
Like that was because they needed to make so many pictures so quickly. There's only like a few studios, but the same number of pictures if you think about it. And that's like crazy.
Yeah.
That
No,
they
for
would
the
treat their
record,
extras that way.
nowadays, a PA tells the extras, oh, so-and-so is in the makeup chair. You have 45 minutes. They don't have to just stand there forever. Right. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's only important because a lot of this movie later discusses the power dynamics of societies, and
Right.
this is a part of that. So that I just wanted to hint at that.
Yeah. So, whatever. So they drug George Clooney, Baird Whitlock, and by the time he goes to his trailer, he's all dizzy, and they knock on his trailer door, and he passes out, and they kidnap him.
Yeah.
And that's the inciting incident of the quote-unquote plot, which barely matters. But the general arc of the plot of this film, so to speak, is that Baird Whitlock goes missing.
There's
for
a
one
kidnapping.
day. Yeah.
Yeah.
But meanwhile, Eddie Mannix, none the wiser, is meeting with the religious people, and this, I would argue, this is one of the first scenes where when I watched this the first time, I thought, it's a weak Coen Brothers movie. And the reason is I wanted something like Fargo that was really spare and elegant and on point and had like it was an arrow driving at a certain insight. And I just realized this is not that. Fucking get over yourself. Relax. It's a comedy. Comedies meander. And I would argue that this is a sequence where the Coen brothers were just like, we have a lot of good religion jokes. We want to get them out. We're going to live in this scene for a minute until all of our religion jokes are gotten out. Go fuck yourself. Like the plot of this film is not paced in the way that an Inside Llewyn Davis or A Serious Man is. So we get this kind of rambling scene where all the religious figures from each different sect talk about the film, and there's fucking killer jokes all throughout, and that's all it is. It's just a joke machine. One of my favorites is when they finally get around to, he goes, so do you think there's anything in here that will offend anyone? And the Coptic Christian, who would have like the long white beard and the very severe black dress, says, I have a problem with the movie. How is he going to jump from one chariot to another while he's going full speed? It doesn't make sense. So he's like, okay, that's more of like a plot hole. We're not really
the Greek Orthodox patriarch.
That's him,
is
the
like,
Greek Orthodox guy. Yeah,
he's like essentially just like saying like, but like, what if like, I don't know, I thought it was too loud or something
he's
like that.
Pitching to the film. Yeah,
and of course the Protestants and the Catholics are at each other's throats most of the time because they have little nuanced discussions about, like, when he's asking the portrayal of Christ, they immediately jump to what Christ is. They don't think about the portrayal, because that's where the problem is. The problem is that they all disagree about the fundamental.
Oh, no, he's not. Oh, fuck you.
He's a polarizing figure.
Yeah.
And the Jewish rabbi is constant. He's my favorite. He's the best. Of course, it's going to come from the Coen brothers that they're going to make the rabbi fucking hilarious.
Great Jewish
He's
jokes.
creating plethora of arguments against all the other faiths, pointing out holes in all of their logics, but ultimately says like, and how about you? How do you think about it? I have an opinion. It's just such a great, like, you've only been opinions, man.
And man, if you like, my extended family on my mom's side is all Jewish and loves Jewish humor. And it's funny that they did like a sequence of Jew jokes in the perfect, like, that's such a classic formula for a Jewish Yiddish joke, is at the end him going, I haven't an opinion, but I want to quote some of his best moments because the rabbi steals the scene. he goes, they're arguing about whether Jesus is God or he's the Son of God, who's the Holy Ghost. And he goes, I'm confused, Eddie Mannix. And the rabbi goes, there's a reason you're confused. These men are screwballs. Oh, God has children now? And what, a pet? A collie maybe? No. God is a bachelor and very angry. And then I love the traditional like Protestant Christian guy goes, no, he used to be angry, because that's the difference between the Old and New Testament.
That's the fundamental difference.
Yes. And the rabbi goes, oh, he used to be what? He got over it? And he goes, see, you worship the God of another age, a God with no love in his heart. And he goes, that's not true. He likes Jews.
Yeah.
So, just the chosen people storyline boiled down in that way is so funny to me.
It's a great scene.
But it wraps up with nothing really accomplished. Again, I think it was just a joke machine scene. And cuts to, for my money, I do think this movie is at risk of being inside baseball, and I think that's one of the reasons it's up its own ass, which we'll get to in pedagogy. But if you do work in the industry, one of the funniest moments in the entire goddamn movie is Hobie Doyle, who is genuinely a cowboy, like ranch hand type guy, simple guy. That's why he was cast in this role. Eating a plate of baked beans on set, and a PA comes up and says, okay, Hobie, studio says you're done with this movie. You're reporting back to the lot for a different movie. Oh, how come? They're completely changing your image. Oh, okay. That's incredible to me. And it's so emblematic of what the studio system was like versus what life is like now. And then he goes, oh, and you're escorting Carlotta Valdes on a date tonight. And he goes, how come? I don't know her. And he goes, oh, well, the studio's changing your image. And he goes, okay. And he picks a bean out of his teeth. And that's the whole scene.
That's the whole scene. He's just being told how to be a person.
Your life
who's
is this
dating.
Now.
That's Capital Pictures, baby.
Yeah. Side note, Carlotta Valdes just reminded me how great Harvey Danger is as a musical group and how underrated. A good song called Carlotta Valdes. So anyway, personally, because I have problems. It's my problem. I viscerally hate seeing Scarlett Johansson's face in things, especially in films that I like and I respect the makers of. I think she's awful. She's good in this, though. She's okay. And I want you.
Yeah, she's an Esther Williams type, and it's like she kills that performance.
She does. I gotta eat crow on this. But man, when it cut to her face, I was like,
Yeah.
But can you take this part because of my ScarJo fatigue?
I'll take as long as you want, man. I'm enjoying the ride, but I can pick up anytime. Yeah. So ScarJo appears, and it kind of starts with a wonderful synchronized swimming vignette. And I don't know if you noticed, but when the when the whale does kind of comes out and
breaches.
They do a version of what is it, breaching? Is that
breaching.
What whales do?
Who did all the this is a reference to a particular guy that made this style of film famous too. Is it Bob Fosse? Mm-hmm. Someone like that.
Not Bob Fosse. I don't know who it was.
Right.
Yeah. But I can't remember.
If you've seen old films, there's this
spectaculars.
There was this subgenre of water spectaculars, people flipping and doing synchronized swimming. Yeah.
Yeah, is what they call it in the movie. And that's kind of true. I don't know how big it was at the time because I never really saw aquatic
films. It was
films.
a niche genre that existed.
Yeah, exactly.
That's all.
And that's what ScarJo is the queen of, essentially. But yeah, if you notice when the whale breaches, it kind of looks like a pinball. Or a pin. It looks like a bowling ball and a pin.
Oh.
I think they're referencing because they have a very framed very similarly in the Big Lebowski dream sequence, and the composition is almost identical.
Oh,
it's just one of those things that I was like, oh, they're quoting themselves there.
I didn't think of that connection, but I did immediately think it put me in the mind of the dream sequences both from Big Lebowski and Hudsucker.
Right.
It's amazing that in this sequence they do, like you said, it's like what the movie wished it could be in the 50s. They do probably the most spectacular aqua, whatever you said, type of film that's ever been put to film. They top all the real ones because they have more modern technology and shit. But at the same time, it feels exactly correct. It feels like one of those old movies. And at the same time, it's a beautiful deconstruction of the elements of that makes you appreciate why they appreciate something that is objectively like dated and silly. So this shit is dated and silly, but at the same time, by watching this, the fact that they did an overhead shot that just holds forever, that makes what you're looking at almost seem abstract. Like at first it's just shapes and shit. It makes you appreciate in a way that I just find so powerful. I actually found myself thinking, you know what? It's silly synchronized swimming, but it is beautiful in its way. Like
there's value of pictures.
They're able to mock an art form and show it as cute and quaint, and legitimately show why it's beautiful through novel deconstruction of that art form.
And that's that is the crux of the movie. Like, in one hand, they're giving you scenes that are they're almost juxtaposing them directly next to each other, as we'll continue with this scene with ScarJo is a great example in her vignette. The value of picture in one hand that you just said, and then at the other hand, it gives you a look that it's like, clearly you're seeing the sausage being made, and it's kind of a horrible taxing, kind of ruins it kind of version of it. And so you're seeing both. You're seeing like, oh, but that is a nice picture, but here's what it takes to make it.
Yeah.
So ScarJo,
I think the motto of this movie could be flowers grow from dirt.
Exactly. Yeah. And you look no further than ScarJo literally being like a mermaid like goddess.
A princess,
and she like comes out
sea.
of Yeah, from the sea. And she like comes out of the water in a shot because they reversed it, and she's not wet and stuff like that. So her hair's perfect. And then they call cut. And then she says, like, I forget, but she basically goes, God damn it, starts swearing up a storm.
She just says, damn it.
Yeah. And then they take off her she calls her ass, which is the mermaid part of her. And then she has a conversation with Mannix, where what we learn is that she's unwed and she's pregnant, and it's a publicity issue for the studio. So she needs to marry someone, or this needs to be resolved. And she's discussed with Mannix that in order to keep her image and save face amongst the studio, and therefore like America, she needs to marry someone or
America.
Something.
She has to be married before her baby comes out. So just from a wokeness point of view, it must be said, like, from our standards, Mannix is a piece of shit. Like, he's literally for money enforcing the patriarchy. He's like, you're pregnant.
Yeah, that's the system.
You got to be in the kitchen because you're pregnant. Yeah, essentially.
Yeah, I think there's a line that says like, but the reason is because like America thinks that you're innocent, and she goes like, yeah.
And he's like,
true.
America needs that.
That is my image.
You have to be Shirley
like,
Temple
we can't have
that's
this.
what America needs to believe in to win the war against the
and
Nazis or whatever. Yeah.
Yeah, and they're also, it's this weird thing because they're also a part of religion, like this religious-based system where moral and ethical codes are dictated by religion. And because of that, you get this kind of weird thing where it's like getting rid of the child isn't on the table and stuff like that.
Oh, that
like
doesn't come up. It would never even occur to either of them. Yeah.
They would never occur to either of them, even though they're
you're right. Like from an efficiency standpoint, if she just got an abortion, that would have solved
in today's
everything.
world. Her choice. But like in this world, she can't. So even though they're depicted as monsters, they're not. They find for some reason that if they were to I think that's one of those interesting omissions because of it's the 1950s hypocrisy.
Honestly, the Coen Brothers, another skill in their quiver of arrows is they are clear-eyed, which is what I was getting with them not embellishing. They're really good at observing reality and just translating it in a way that feels like mostly true. Where you're like, yep, that's a good balance of like, that's what that guy would be like. That's the set of beliefs he's working off of. It doesn't mean I agree with all his beliefs, but I see why he's a product of his time. That's what he would do. They're just good, man. They're good.
And that's why they choose actors who are able to inhabit the roles. They give them dense roles, but they give them to people. It's like they know who can do it because they talk to them about every aspect of the...
Yes.
That's just how they work. They just talk it all out. So meanwhile, Hobie arrives at a stage picture in the best scene in the film, in my opinion.
Everyone's favorite scene,
Ray Fiennes is directing.
Voldemort!
It's a horrifying...
It's fucking Voldemort, you guys.
Fucking Voldemort, number 2 Harry Potter.
This prestige picture.
Yeah. This is a horrifying scene. I can speak as a director, and I'm sure it is as an actor. It's the most awkward. It's so wonderful because it points at something that's, yes, inside baseball, but it's so true about humanity in general, just when people do not see eye to eye. It's probably the best scene in the movie, and it's all centered around this one sentence, would it were so simple. But of course he says it in kind of like a British accent, so it kind of sounds like, would it were so simple, would it were so simple. And it's just this scene is essentially just over and over and over saying this, because that's the line that Hobie needs to say, and Hobie's this, John Wayne kind of talking person, and he's trying to get into like a Howard Hawks or like a higher echelon director who directs dramas. And the dramas are usually seen as like the higher class pictures. They just don't understand each other's words or worlds. And so he walks in like John Wayne, and on the other side, Ray Fiennes just does not see how he doesn't understand. Just say it exactly the way I say it. And he actually gives him a line reading at one point. And they're trying to basically see eye to eye, trying to get him to say the line, and he just can't say it. And they do something like 3 or 4 takes on it. There's a lot of amazing things going on in this scene as well, because as Hobie tries to mimic Lorenz's, which is the name of the Ray Fiennes character, over-the-top gravitas, they have at one point an Abbott and Costello, who's on First Moment, where Hobie keeps getting corrected by Lorenz that his name, when he says like, now Hobie, or he says Mr. Doyle. And so at first they're Mr. Doyle and Mr. Lorenz. But the problem is that Hobie doesn't understand Lorenz as a phrase or as a word that's unfamiliar to him. So he keeps calling him Lawrence. Now, the funny thing is that it happens to be that later Hobie is then corrected when he says Mr. Lorenz, or he says Mr. Lorenz, and he says, you know what, you can call me by my Christian name, my first name, which happens to be Lawrence. So his actual name is Lawrence Lorenz. And this is just adding to the absurdity that Hobie can't even understand why Lawrence, like what's going on with his name. He's just out of water. He's a fish out of water. All he'd want to do is just go back into the dust pitchers and like lasso someone. That's all. That's a skill set. And they're trying to make it towards so simple, trying to make it work out, and they just can't.
I think it's key that Hobie is very much trying his hardest and wants to do a good job. He's not John Wayning the scene in the way that, like, again, no one's a diva in this. And I think that that's why it works, is like Hobie totally wants to give the director what he wants, as most actors would. And again, they play with, at the beginning of this sequence, your understanding of what is real and what is really real, because they cut to this drawing room scene and it's framed in such a way that, again, it could be a scene from the film and you think it is. And I want people to pay attention to pacing here, because the Coen brothers know that if they linger on it for a while, your brain will have time to work and settle and decide, oh, this is going on. So they intentionally lengthen these shots of everyone looking bored, and you're wondering what's going on, and then Hobie walks in, and you think, oh, this is the scene in Merrily We Dance. And then it turns out, no, he's just using the stage door, and this was a bunch of actors sitting on set waiting, bored, for Hobie to come over from lunch and get here.
Yep, it's the second time they've done it, but the first time they made it, they switched the expectation. They set up the expectation that, oh, this is actually, no, they're just extras waiting. Oh, no, they're not extras waiting.
Oh,
Wayne
yes,
Knight is
they
poisoning
are.
someone.
Yeah,
and then in this one, they're like doing the reverse, where like, oh, this is the pitcher actually. Oh, no, they're just extras waiting.
Yeah. And I just think people, because the Would That It Were So Simple is edited so expertly and acted so expertly, and the basic joke being there that Mr. Lorenz doesn't understand that Hobie is imitating his accent. Like, that's what he doesn't understand.
Yeah.
Because he keeps saying twa, because he's British. And so Hobie goes, okay, would that it were so simple. And he goes, why? Why are you saying this twa? Would that it were so simple. And he goes, would that it were so simple. But I think this scene gets like slept on a little bit because there's so much other good shit. There's like 9, and you said it perfectly. There's 9 Abbott and Costello sketches going on simultaneously because there's also the fact that every time he interacts with the door, he fucks it up in a different new way. He can't get the door right.
His sneakers are squeaky.
His sneakers squeak. He insists on using cowboy lingo for everything relentlessly, and you can tell it's getting to Ralph Fiennes. Like he goes, "So you're haunted because you've seen his valise." "So I'm haunted by Biff's grip. His valise, yes."
Yeah.
And
he also is being thrown. Lorenz is throwing words like that, even like they're SAT words, but like you're more of a wordsmith, Michael. But like a lot of these words, I don't even know what they were.
Well,
I didn't know exactly what he meant by "say it ruefully." And I was like, "What's ruefully?"
Ruefully, and he says it literally, and he goes, no, don't say ruefully, just say it ruefully."
Yeah, exactly. And it's just
and
like,
you know what?
He's throwing, that's bad direction, actually.
And it's Hobie's acting too, just like he so gives off the genuine naive feel of like when he doesn't know what it means, but he's game when he's like, and you know what?
Look, I want to do it the way you want to do it.
One thought, only one thought. And he goes, "Of course, Mr. Lorenz, I want to give you whatever you want." And he goes, "Throw in a mirthless chuckle." A mirthless chuckle. And you're like, he doesn't know what that means. You know he doesn't know.
You know he doesn't know what
And he
that
goes,
means.
"Gotcha, copy." And I also love their little side conversation where he goes, "She importunes you to sit on the couch," and conversation ensues. And he goes, "Can I talk to you?" And he steps aside and he goes, "She importunes me now. Would my character be worried about that? Is that scandalous? Like, would I be upset about that?" And he goes, No. Importune. I merely mean to say she invites you to sit on the couch." And he goes, "But does she importune me? You just sit on the couch and conversation ensues."
Yeah.
So
a great
it's a good scene.
I just suggest you can watch it on YouTube too if you haven't seen it. It's one of my favorite scenes in the movie.
It's an editing masterclass as well, and comedy is so much about editing. So anyway, we cut to, and I gotta say, this is the part of the movie where it loses me. Whenever they try to actually make the plot advance, you're like, why does this have a plot? It didn't need a plot. So we cut to waves crashing on 2 pyramidal rocks. That will just come back later as a thing, as an image. So there's a little Barton Fink in there. But for now, all you do is see a wave crashing on 2 pyramidal rocks. We pull back to reveal a Malibu mansion on the beach and a little yappy dog. And again, just the sheer craftsmanship expertise. The way the shot zooms in and the door opens and Clooney's unconscious body gets dragged in just as the dog does a single, like, excited turn in place. Everything about the shot, and this is what makes every Coen Brothers movie better than most movies, just shows a level of craftsmanship that makes you wonder how it even happened. It's like in Barton Fink when the seagull dives into the sea, and you're like, how'd they even make that happen at that time? Fuck. Like, the craftsmanship.
Yeah.
But all it really
As you
establishes
remember from that one, they didn't. That was just luck.
That's true.
But the thing is,
this
if
dog
you
was
plan
planned, though.
for
The dog
everything,
looping was planned for sure.
The dog looping was planning, and it could have just been a simple shot, and they made it have a little bit more character. And when you're thinking and itemizing things in every frame at every second to such an extent, you're also going to get lucky sometimes because you're putting so much effort and you insist that it's the highest quality. So of course luck randomly happens. There's happy accidents. That's where the term comes from. You'll probably have a higher ratio of that happening if you're controlling everything.
Yeah. If you have
but you
levers
can't
to
control
craft.
things like birds diving in the sea, so sometimes you're just going to get a
You
shot
can
at it.
nowadays if you just CG it in after the fact, but yeah.
You throw some chum
Right.
or something like that. Yeah. they
Ooh,
could've-
there's some real world problem solving. Okay, so Mannix, what happens next? Mannix becomes aware. Eddie Mannix becomes aware that their star Baird Whitlock is nowhere to be found, although he assumes he's on
Yeah.
a bender because he's a Kirk Douglas type.
Yeah, exactly. So we've gotten Clooney's at the beachfront house now, doesn't know what he's doing, but now we get the first word of it. Fiennes comes in to complain about Hobie as well, because we're supposed to
Yes.
assume some time has passed.
I think
and
it's
he,
important to point out that their current solution they have on the table is to replace, because the extras are so expensive and the set's so expensive, they need to finish filming Hail Caesar. Their current plan is to use his stunt double, whose name is Chunk, and just let him do the scenes. So that,
and shoot him from the back and get footage of people's reaction shots and kind of riff for time until we get the money shot.
But then Voldemort bursts in and he's upset and he says Hobie is not working out, and he specifically says, "For 2 decades now, the words Lawrence presents have meant something to the public."
Yeah, he's so good. And they're trying to solve things too. Once again, Mannix, Brolin is so good at problem solving, because even when he doesn't have a solution, he still puts you at ease at some way. He's like, okay, I'm going to do this. And so his solution to it, he's like, oh, I believe that he can do it, even though it's like an impossible thing. And from our point of view, it's like, this is never going to work, the whole Hobie Lorenz thing. But he goes, I'm going to look at dailies, I'm going to see what the problem is, and I'm going to fix it, basically. And he tells Lorenz that it's going to get fixed.
And like, I'll talk
and Lorenz
to
is
Hobie.
Not happy, but he's not like, he's done complaining, right?
Yes. Mannix
and then
is
at
also
the end he
good
says, and
person.
I got a lunch with and he's like, but now I got a lunch.
Yes. We briefly cut back to the kidnap house, where we see Fred Malamed from Serious Man cutting the crusts off of cucumber sandwiches and telling the little dog, "Quiet, Ingalls." So now we know the dog's name is Ingalls, which, if you know that name, is a strong tip-off that these are communists, because he's a famous communist thinker. Then
you also have Michael Gambon saying, literally, and so Bard Whitlock found himself in the hands of communists.
Yes, he doesn't say that quite yet, but soon.
Quite yet, yeah. Okay.
First, tell us what happens at the secret lunch at the Chinese restaurant.
Okay, so he has lunch with higher up at Lockheed, who's trying to lure him out of the pictures into aviation. And the whole time the Lockheed employee... Lockheed is he is just dunking on Capital. He's like, that's like the place of make-believe. You should come to where we do stuff, aviation. And he shows him a photo of Bikini Atoll, where he's like, this is the real world. We're creating like weapons of mass destruction. This is the future. You need to live in the now.
He shows
someone
him
who
a
says,
photo
good at the
of
job.
A hydrogen bomb test. Which,
exactly.
Incidentally, according to Nerd Canon, the Bikini Atoll hydrogen bomb test is the one that mutated all the sea creatures and formed the universe of SpongeBob SquarePants. So just know that.
Oh, yeah, that makes sense. That makes sense.
Yeah.
And Clooney has to take some time to kind of think it over. But I do think that one thing to note is that when he does look at the photo, he says Armageddon. Or he says Apocalypse. He says one of those two words.
No, but
he says Armageddon.
It's so subtle. I mean, spoiler alert, he picks movies, and that's the whole message of the movie. But so that we can have that in mind while we imbibe these scenes, I think it's interesting that they very subtly have him Brolin react with disgust or like resentment whenever the guy tells him things that you've seen are true. When he goes like, if you work with aviation and scientists, you won't have to like babysit these weirdos. And you're like, that's kind of true. His job is hard because the people, like, for example,
he's not wrong about a lot of stuff.
Right. Baird Whitlock does go on 3-day benders when he should be shooting a $50 million movie. And fuck that. Like, Baird Whitlock's an adult. Why should he do that? Like, can't he get his shit together?
Impressively good at his job,
and it's like,
almost want someone like him dealing with like saving lives as opposed to just making
or
sure
being an
that
air
people are on
traffic
set at
controller.
time.
And the guy's basically like, you're wasting your talents doing this. And he shows him the bomb and he just says Armageddon, which I think is a great one-word argument of like, right, but why would I want to be a part of building A-bombs? That's terrible too. I don't want to do that
also,
either.
but, he's of the 50s sentiment where the idea was very much so it's us or them. And I just want to drop it for later for pedagogy, just the idea of the fate of man is at play here.
Right. Yeah, the idea of Armageddon's brought up. So we there's a lot of intercutting here because they really milk the mystery box of like, where is Clooney? How's he going to react to this? Mm-hmm. But we're back to the kidnapping house in Malibu. Clooney wakes up. He sees a housekeeper vacuuming. He's in his full Hail Caesar costume, and he's like, hello? And she goes, they're in there. And like, he just politely.
Everyone's in the room.
What's funny is he's had so many benders, you get the impression he thinks he drank so much that he woke up here.
Right.
Like, he's mildly embarrassed. He thinks he randomly wandered into someone's house because he does that so often. So he doesn't treat it like a kidnapping. And of course, even later when he realizes, oh, it is a kidnapping, he just acts like, this is fine. I mean, you're not going to hurt me. I'm Baird Whitlock. So he goes invincible. In and he just sees this weird collection of professors in tweed jackets with pipes talking politics. And he just looks at them confused, basically. And then I got to point out, this guy who takes his jacket, Mr. Smitrovich, that is the sassiest photo ever taken.
He's a sass man.
The choreography of like his crooked smirk as he takes the photo, and then he like humps the air as he pops the flash bulb out of the camera.
Like, I got the good stuff.
He's like the Jesus of this movie. Yeah,
he really is. And it's only 2 photographs. We see him only in like 2 shots.
But he takes Clooney's photo as if he's like molesting George Clooney.
Yeah, and I think the idea is just like, we got him.
Now
he's like, we got you. Now if you ever try to talk shit on us, we have photographic proof that you're going to communist meetings.
Yeah,
is the subtext.
But unlike what you'd expect, which is to be like, what's the meaning of this? Why am I kidnapped? Clooney's just such like an affable dude who feels no danger or consequences, that he like takes some finger sandwiches and he sits there going like, what are you guys all about? What's the deal here?
Yeah,
and they slowly
like,
explain to him like the tenets.
History is economics? Tell me more.
Yeah, they basically explain to him, well, we kidnapped you because we're communists. And they start to explain the tenets of communism, and we cut out. And we'll come back to this later.
And my favorite point is then he kind of flexes in the other direction, which is smart of Clooney. He's like, well, you know what? I got to get back. The studio needs me. So maybe we'll just pick this up at the next meeting. And the response to that, I'm afraid it's not that simple, which as now we're starting to build.
So simple.
Would that it were so simple. Okay, so Mannix goes to the Hail Caesar set to see if that Whitlock's returned. He has not. But instead, from the producer that he was talking to previously, a ransom note for $100,000 has been slipped under his door, signed The Future, saying, we have your movie star. Give us $100,000.
We are the future.
Which is very much what you expect out of a Coen Brothers movie. There's almost always a note that says, like, do something, a ransom, for an amount of money.
They like gun crime. It's true.
They like gun crime. The next sequence, do you have anything else you want to add to that?
No, just that everyone on a Coen Brothers set is playing at such a high level. Like the alligator skin briefcase and the way the belt looks around it. The costume and prop design is next level on this film as well. Like the briefcase has such character. I love it. Yeah. It's like the bag in No Country has so much character.
Yeah, and it's because they, once again, we've said it so many times in this. I mean, Ellen
they
Chenoweth,
only work with people who are great.
Everyone's hitting on their stride, and it's as we get to Howdy Doodad, there's also some interesting aspects of that.
Nice. But yeah, he has a walk
Thor
and talk.
And Thessaly.
Walk and talk with Thora Thacker.
Thora Thacker. And as we learn over the course of these 2 scenes, there's like a there and back again. Thessaly Thacker are 2 journalistic sisters who are twins, played by Tilda Swinton. They each have scoops that they think on 2 separate Baird Whitlock stories. One is an old one that alludes to his past with boozing and womanizing, and the new one is that he's missing. Now, Thora,
I thought the old one was gay innuendo specifically. Because
it's gay innuendo as they on wings as eagles.
That's but that calls out to.
We don't know what it is yet, but
okay.
She does in this scene is kind of allude to the fact that he's a playboy.
That's long rumored of Kirk Douglas, and I have to imagine was a specific reference of like, yeah, dude, like what do you think? Like all these amazing like clear-cut film
Right.
stars. A lot of them, if they were bi or curious or whatever, fucked each other a couple times. Like, they're rich divas living in trailers doing whatever the fuck they want. What do you think? So, yeah, there's a rumor going around that Clooney, like, fucks whatever he wants whenever he wants. And at the same time, now he's missing, and they're wondering why.
And just so everyone knows a little bit of history, just like a lot of other people, like C.C. Calhoun, who Frances McDormand plays later, was an actual film editor. The feuding Thora and Thessaly Thacker, the identical twin sister group, gossip columnists, that's mimicking an actual rivalry between two twin sisters, Hedda Hopper and Luella Parsons. Just
I
stuff
didn't
like
know
that. So it's just that kind of thing where it's like, that's not super important to the script. That's why they didn't dwell on it. It's just something that's nice that they know what where they're coming from. I think it shows a reverence to the history of what they're talking about.
Definitely. Speaking of efficient problem solving from Mannix, what a masterstroke. He convinces Thora not to run the story, and then he says Thessaly not to run the story about the kidnapping by saying, if you'll wait one day, you can always run it tomorrow. I'm just asking you to wait one day. I'll give you a real scoop. And he's able to sell them on the idea that Hobie and Carlotta dating tonight is a scandalous big story, even though we know that's literally a PR event that he wants to drive media attention to. So he's just amazing at problem solving in the most efficient way possible.
He's using his own solutions to work for him to solve other problems.
He's working in solutions to solve other problems. It's amazing. Yeah.
Right. And yeah, so he's good at that. He also is told by his assistant at the end of those walk and talks that he has a call from the future waiting.
No, you have to unpack this. I'm sorry. But this made me laugh so hard because it's literally like, it's just the most emblematic moment of like, it was just another time. It's a kid who could never fucking exist. Like, what a naive society. Yeah. This little like red-haired kid who looks like fucking alfalfa rides up on a bike with a basket and a bell on it at a movie studio. And he goes, oh, hey, what's up, Peanut? And the kid who is apparently named Peanut goes, geez, I know it sounds screwy, Mr. Man, but the secretary said to find you, PDQ. Apparently someone's calling from the future? And he goes like, oh boy, I gotta run. And I just love
the future.
It's like fucking Jimmy Olsen and Superman or something. Yeah.
And like no one is batting an eye.
No one's batting an eye at this kid Peanut, who is like, how can this kid even exist? Jesus. It's like
And you know that when the Coen Brothers were sitting in front of a typewriter or a word processor, what they're doing is they're just going like, what's his name be? Peanut. And you know they both went,
he should say PDQ. Oh, yeah. No one says that anymore.
Yeah. He's such a piece of shit. Yeah, he's a piece of shit. I love him. Like, they probably dreamt about things that they could do to him that would be hilarious that they'd never put in the movie. Because we do, like, the same type of shit.
Oh, sure.
Like,
Peanut rides.
I hear about writers' rooms.
Peanut rides his bike off frame. You hear him get hit by a truck. Stuff like that.
Yeah, stuff like that. Yeah, why not? Fucking Peanut.
So he returns to his office to try and talk to the future, who we know are the communist kidnappers. They've hung up already, but Hobie is there waiting because, as he said earlier, I'm meeting with Hobie to try and explain good acting to him. And basically they have a very genuine heart-to-heart about how Hobie's trying hard but not getting the hang of it, and it doesn't get resolved because he ultimately admits to Hobie, you know, I have more on my mind right now. Baird Whitlock has been kidnapped and we don't know by who. And Hobie's...
I fucking love this.
Well, I love this. It really reminded me of Leo DiCaprio's arc in Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. I realize is about him like thinking he was a good actor because he's in action and Western vehicles, then realizing he's not that good, and then stepping up and being good. And it's so interesting how Hobie's microcosm is the same. And I would say in a quieter way, this actor kills it just as hard as Leo did. Like, it's a good...
And by the way, this is Han Solo. You know that, right?
Oh, this is the new Han Solo, right? Yeah, from Solo story, Star Wars world.
Yeah. Yeah. He's very good.
He's a great actor.
Very good. Yeah. What's his name? I gotta call it. Just
Well,
so
look it up while I say.
People.
He says, Hobie, there's $100K in this grip. Ransom money. Baird Whitlock has
Alden
been kidnapped.
Enreich.
And then
Enrenreich? Enrenreich?
Han Enrenreich. Anyway, yeah, he says.
Anyway.
I just really laughed when he explains the kidnapping, and it slow zoom pumps in on Hobie, and Hobie goes, "This is bad." Like he identifies kidnapping as bad.
But it's also like Hobie is like very wise in this scene, because you can tell that it's just like these are just two people who know that they're in a predicament talking about it, and there's no ego involved in it. Surprisingly, these two people amongst everyone else in the film have the least amount of ego.
Yeah.
Right? So these are the two kind of guys that you'd want to solve a problem.
And I love,
because they don't care about their bullshit. They just care about solving the problem.
Well, Tarantino said he's going to do a spin-off series for Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, which I couldn't give a shit about. But I would love to see a spin-off series where Hobie and Eddie Mannix solve problems, like on a week-to-week episode basis.
Yeah. And so before the future calls back, Hobie wisely also tells him to look the extras since they're not vetted. And that's like, of course, that's like
right,
obvious. Like
extra.
no one, as it was proven by the film itself. That's
but
true.
I still think what he says is pretty like mean spirited. He's like, you look at an extra, you don't know what they're thinking, and I'm like,
that is a little too much.
Harsh.
It should just be like, we don't know. They're question marks, right? They could act their way.
The other way to look at it is, well, all the stars, you own their lives, so like it's probably not them.
It couldn't be someone inside the house.
And also his wife calls real quick, and I think as an important point in this pattern of establishing that Eddie Mannix is on some level a good human, they make a joint parenting decision where he's surprisingly, you get to see that no matter how forceful he is in his work, when he talks to his wife, he's very much like listening and attentive and like, well, what do you think we should do? And she goes, I think we should do this. And he goes, okay, that sounds good. And it's just sort of to contrast with how he acts at work.
Right, where he's always the biggest dick in the room.
But the future calls. They say, we're the future. Leave the money on stage 8. And he says to Hobie, can I borrow your belt? Because the briefcase is too big to hold the money. He belts the briefcase closed, and we cut to stage 8, where we see
Channing Tatum.
Another one of these segments that's like a lookalike of a film genre that used to be popular. In this case, the sailor, like a Gene Kelly movie.
It's Fred Astaire.
It's Fred Astaire and Gene Kelly. It's sailors dancing and singing about how they're about to go to sea. The underlying joke is a little dated, even by our standards in 2020, but I would argue they don't. To me, it didn't really feel homophobic, but it does treat being gay as silly, which I would still argue is problematic. But it's well executed. It's Channing Tatum dancing with all his sailor buddies, doing a song called No Dames about how on the sea they won't have any dames, but of course it becomes an obvious double entendre where like we're gonna fuck each other, no dames, only dudes.
Right. Like what's funny about it is the joke structure, not the joke itself. Like I like how the lyrics slip into, they're like sad about the fact that there's gonna be no women, and then by the end of the song they're like, yeah, no women, and that's like a weird turn for people to go through in a song.
Yes,
but at the same time, it's a kind of a dated. I mean, it's just a gay sailor joke. That's all. It is.
Which is like you get the feel of the Coen Brothers making jokes from their age bracket. You know what I mean? Like I get it. It's a simple gay joke, and when I was 12. Those jokes, and not just because I was 12, I mean even among adults, like if you look at sitcoms of the era, when I was 12, that was still funny because we still, most of us, like as a culture on some deep level, hadn't reckoned with the fact that we felt weird about people being gay. Now everyone's over it by and large, which is great, and it makes these jokes less funny. Like I think in the next generation, this joke would almost have no meaning because you'd be like, why does it matter that they're gonna fuck each other on the boat? I don't care. But
are they? It seems like everyone loves it.
All right. So with that circle drawn, I just want to point out that again, from an execution standpoint, in and of itself, it is an impressive bit of tap dancing and choreography, and it's fucking great at every level as far as like being a big musical number. The lyrics are also...
And I don't want to...
Yeah, go ahead.
Well, I don't want to dip into pedagogy too much, but just because we're on it right now, I think it's important to note, like, they're just like Coen Brothers are always, they're kind of like a snake. The next scene is when we're back in Malibu, and we can talk about more about it. But Clooney is blackmailed for On Wings as Eagles amongst the communists, which is specifically that he is like fraternizes or he's homosexual or there's some scandal there.
Oh, interesting.
So while it is saying that at this time the 50s is making a gay sailor joke, it's also showing the seedy underbelly about why that it's a gay sailor
right,
joke.
And it reminds me of, it's like the comedy version of LA Confidential, where they're like, there's the Hollywood glitz and glamour, but behind the scenes, everyone's sucking each other's dick and their stomachs are full of semen and they're dead in a hotel. This is the lighter version of that same story, talking about the duality.
Yeah, it's the hypocrisy of 1950s. It's almost like, even though I do want to say, because they do it, and I don't think that artists should be separated from their art in this regard, it's always hard for me to really pin them down on these kind of jokes when it does seem like they're saying that the 50s is making those jokes. Now, that may be me giving a lot of credit
as we
to
know,
the Coen Brothers,
right? I mean,
but it's it's not intentional, you know.
Agreed. Or you're right that they're using the themes in both ways, where they're like, it's actually an interesting point to say society is so homophobic at this time that it could ruin Baird Whitlock's career. Right, because it's funny when Thora Thacker says that and you realize that the reveal is going to be that he had gay sex once. From a 2020 perspective, you're like, and? Like, that wouldn't ruin his career. Yeah. But it would at this time because it's a homophobic society. So at the same, they're pointing out, which is interesting, by placing those elements together, society was so homophobic in the 50s, and yet look at how homoerotic their media was. Because when you try to pretend being gay doesn't exist, you will accidentally, hilariously make super gay shit constantly because you have no sense of what it is to be gay. Yeah.
And then in 2016, it's also just a joke to make fun of that.
I agree.
Would that it were to so simple.
But I'm saying, like, I've been thinking about this a lot lately. I don't know what I am sexually. It's hard. I'm somewhere in the middle of the spectrum. But I wouldn't want to like co-op ownership of gay issues. But like, if a gay person told me they watched this and they thought it was really campy and hilarious, I would be like, that makes sense. And if a gay person watched it and was like, I felt a little minimized by the fact that the butt of the joke was that it's silly to be gay, I'd also be like, that makes sense too. So, but Channing Tatum kills in it. He is a fabulous dancer.
These Coens.
I want to point out the highlights from the sequence now that we've caveated it to hell. I love just the stupidity, like the on-the-nose stupidity of the lyrics. No dames, but we might see some octopuses. No dames. Or a half a dozen clams. No dames. And you're like, a half a dozen clams. I don't know why that makes me laugh. We're joining the Navy.
It's so specific.
We're joining the Navy. We might see a half a dozen clams.
What the fuck is that?
They do this amazing barstool tap routine. It's so cute. I can't stand it. They do that bit where the tablecloths get pulled out from under them by the perfect bartender who's just like, oh, come on, what's going on here? He swings off the sign that says swing and dinghy. It itself is a swing and dinghy. I personally think the way they frame the tap dancing feet is a No Country for Old Men reference when Anton Chigurh's strangling the cop in the beginning, but I could be wrong. I could be reading into it too much. Yeah. And then, by the end, they're literally singing like, here's how it'll be on the sea. We'll have to be each other's dames and shit like that. They start dancing. And then at the end, I think one of the last lines is, the only thing that's certain is we'll see a lot of sea. And I have to imagine that C stands for cock, right? We'll see a lot of C.
It's got it.
Yeah. And then I think like the climax is them literally just like dry humping each other, but as a dance. as a dance
Yeah,
where
but
like
yeah, it's-
Channing Tatum is playfully caught between two guys' butts.
Right. That's not entirely unfamiliar to like dances that they did
And that's
and
yes,
still do.
absolutely.
In dancing.
There are sailing tap dancing movies from the 50s where guys' dicks are touching the guy's butt next to them, and that's fine. I love
And kind
it.
of the famous one of the famous stills is also like Channing Tatum with his like he has like a face, he's like, oh, like he's looking off like he's whatever the name of that 50s little kid who's like gets caught and puts their finger to their mouth, gets
or
caught
like yeah, the girl on the
you see a little of
sunscreen
his
bottle
butt.
with her
Yeah, and stuff like that. And you can tell that he's holding, like he's vertically 69ing a dude.
Yeah. Oh,
So
yeah.
it's like
they
doing
all
this-
freeze frame. And honestly, like for Coen Brothers, it's pretty on the nose. They all freeze frame in like Team
Right.
America World Police poses of like the puppets fucking. Like they all freeze as if they're fucking.
It's very strange. I mean, it's well done, but
That's
it's very
what we're
strange.
dancing around is. I do think something about it's odd, and yet at the same time, you're like, it has to be said. When told to do a mildly offensive send-up of like gay tap dancing, Channing Tatum fucking destroyed it. Like it's so well done, regardless of whether you find it offensive.
And I don't even know, when did Magic Mike come out? Is this pre or post?
I don't know, but I love Channing Tatum. Yeah, or doesn't he get what's the guy's name? Eastbound and Down guy. Doesn't he fuck Channing Tatum in the ass in This Is the End?
Oh yeah, Danny McBride.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, but
he has him as a little slave
there's like
boy.
a shot of Channing Tatum's ass in that haunts my memory. But anyway, moving on. George Clooney, we cut back to the kidnapping house. George Clooney's oblivious to the fact that he's been kidnapped, or he's aware he's kidnapped, but he doesn't seem to feel threatened at all. He's genuinely interested and finds out that they are all bitter screenwriters who got screwed out of profits by the studios. And there was the serious version of that is that Bryan Cranston movie that came out a little bit ago, Trumbo, I think it was called.
Trumbo, yeah.
But this was a
About
trend.
McCarthyism.
Screenwriters at this time were even more undervalued than they are now and didn't get points or a profit participation or anything like that. So the sort of tongue-in-cheek satirical version here, and honestly just because it's a trope of the 50s and 60s and the Coen brothers want to stack together a series of these tropes, they're like, oh, I know, all the disaffected underpaid screenwriters will become communists. That ties all our tropes together nicely.
Yeah, because they're the blacklisting of during the Red Scare kind of stuff.
Yeah. And the kid from Freaks and Geeks plays the most extreme left-winger, which I love, that he's just they're like, well, you see the working class, and he's like, parasitism! And they're like, shut up, Rodney. You're too extreme.
He's too extreme.
But yeah, they're a collection of one of each kind of communist. There's like the Einstein type communist, the British type communist, the proletariat revolutionary type communist. And they slowly convince Clooney that the communism's better than capitalism, and he buys it. He gets flipped, and they also tell him that, or he goes, well, what are you going to do though? Like, are you going to kill me? Because if you let me out, I know who all you are. I know where you live. And they're like, right, but you'll stay compliant because of the on wings as eagles things, which is interesting because that means that Channing Tatum, who leads this group, is willing to use society's normalized homophobia against George Clooney to advance the cause of communism, which is kind of fucked up if you think about it. I know it's a comedy and we're not supposed to, but that's an interesting little circle.
Yeah. Next scene.
Yep, Mannix and ScarJo.
Mannix has an idea, which is once again just Mannix like slaying problems. He figures out that he could find a loophole where Deanna, ScarJo, can adopt her own child.
Yeah.
If they give it to another family, so if she doesn't have the child, she just goes away, has the child, and the child is under the ward of someone else who wants to give up the child, she can then adopt the child from that person. They just need a person who's willing to essentially take the child in for X number of an amount of time. Which
and let's not jump to that actual scene yet, because this is just him having the idea.
No.
Yeah.
this is all just the secretary scenes of him having the idea. Check into if this is possible, because I think it's possible. On the way to Frances McDormand in her little editorial cave, that's the next scene, where Mannix is coming by to see the Hobie Dailies, like he said he
the Hobie Dailies, like he said he.
Like he said he would. And he wants to see how it went, and how they changed or solved the problem. They changed... Which is,
oh my God.
Well, before that happens, just as a random joke, I think just because they want to get Frances McDormand in doing like Looney Tunes, she's got a scarf. So she's very good with the movie Vola, but at a certain point when it's trying to take the film take up is advancing the film, it catches her scarf. And so at first you think, so they do this little bit where right before he's about to say, would that it were so simple, you get like a cigarette burn, and you look and you hear like the machine starting to burn, and you go like, oh shit, is just the film being destroyed? Pan left, and you just see Frances McDormand getting choked to death on this movie Vola, which I think is just it's nothing other than the Looney Tunes.
They literally just Rolodexed. We want to do a
film editor.
We want to do a scene about editing, and I think the important thing about it, from the point of view that this film is an appreciation of film, is that I think it's noble that they were like, we must include a scene that teaches the layperson how valuable editing is to the process. And it feels like the religion meeting scene where you're like, it didn't technically impact the plot. It was just something they knew they wanted in there. And it does make you pay attention to the power of editing, because you've seen multiple takes of Hobie Doyle trying to do this scene, and now you get to see the edit they actually land on.
The payoff.
So they sneakily put in what would be like a YouTube editing tutorial. Like, you saw the source footage, and now you get to see the cut that the studio landed on. But at the same time, they were like, but a joke has to happen. And they're like, oh, I know. It's a rotating machine. What if she gets choked by the machine?
Right. But I just think that there's something nice about the fact that it's an editor joke. In other words, an editor getting choked.
Well, only an old editor joke.
Like Frances McDormand, it makes like, no scarves.
She goes, I shouldn't wear scarves.
She kills it and all that. So it's a joke about an editor, but it's also an editing joke, if that wasn't made clear, where the anticipation of the moment that you're supposed to see the thing that you've been waiting for, you're seeing the lead up. At the right moment, literally at the frame that you're like, okay, and here it goes, they take it away from you. Of course, they bring it back. It's all fine. And they find out that the solution to everything, and they do it kind of tongue-in-cheek, because basically Hobie almost looks directly into camera, is that instead of saying, would that it were so simple, or would that it was so simple, he just goes, it's...
not that simple.
Complicated.
Oh, it's complicated. That's right.
Complicated. And it's like, and now and the thing is, for some reason, we're supposed to believe that whatever makes up Hobie and makes him look smooth, complicated was the right word, because he looks like James Bond when he says it, and like everyone is just like fine with that, and that's how it worked. So the Coens are saying that this is an insurmountable problem that somehow got solved. Why? Because people are good at their job.
And they're like, how it's actually really easy to solve once you find it. Just say that sentence in a way that actor does understand.
Yeah, exactly. How do we solve the problem? Well, would that it were so simple, we just changed it to it's complicated.
Totally works. We do that.
Exactly.
There were many sketches where we worked with actors who were not our core group, who didn't get a joke, and you would just change the line on the spot. And you'd be like, does this make sense to you? And they go, oh, I get it. And you go, then say that. I don't care.
Yeah. So I just love that it's trying to make everything seem so complicated.
I love that when she replays it after the scarf incident, you can actually see the single frame that got burned go through again.
Well, that she burned the work print.
The attention to detail is that work print frame is burned. They will have to address that later.
Yeah. I knew you would look for it, because I looked for it and I was like, I wonder if they did that. And I was like, they did it. And it's just wonderful.
It's just great. Yeah. Okay, so he goes back to meet again. And again, this is just the ticking clock ramping up. I would say the weakest part of the film are the maneuvers to actually keep the plot going are pretty transparent. For the Coen brothers, you're like, okay, he meets with him again and the guy's offer's even better. I get it. This is the engine that's nominally driving us forward. But I'm really just watching Eddie Mannix do stuff. I don't care why.
We're more or less Act 3, and it's all just kind of paying off or not paying off.
Yeah, but we see Eddie we see Eddie meet with the aerospace guy again. The aerospace guy points out that he has a 10-year contract. After the 10 years, he would have a guaranteed pension. He could retire. His life would be much, much, much easier. Like, he would actually have work-life balance. He also gives him presents for his kids, which you assume is airplane shit, which it turns out to be. But at the last moment, he also calls Hollywood a circus, and you can see that Eddie Mannix immediately gets turned off by that.
Yeah, he's not a big fan of the negative viewpoint
of what he's dedicated his life to. Exactly. Then, even if it's true, then we cut to Hobie's date with Carlotta that we knew was going to happen because Eddie Mannix set it up. And I think 2 important points is the film also very intentionally, like we said, this movie's all about the juxtaposition of granting that 50s Hollywood in America was full of toxicity and nonsense and bullshit, and self-importance that was unearned. But at the same time, it really was in the way that a circus is. This is what I think is interesting. The guy just called Hollywood a circus pejoratively. Like, it's bad to be a circus, right? He's saying it in an insulting way. We immediately cut to Hobie Doyle waiting for his date and doing lasso tricks just because he knows how to entertain himself. And it's an uncut wide shot of this actor really doing lasso tricks that are really genuinely mind-blowingly impressive. And you know what? That's the good sense of what a circus is. It immediately cuts from someone going, Hollywood's a circus in a bad way, to something you'd see at a circus that fills you with delight. And like, it's this amazing juxtaposition of, like, without having the line anywhere in the film, powerfully saying, and what's so wrong with a circus? I kind of like the circus. So we see Hobie doing these kick-ass lasso tricks, and we see glimpses of what make the Coen brothers love entertaining as an art form. And he meets Carlotta Valdes, who I really find this beautiful because as an entertainer, it's something you experience for real over and over. These people don't know each other at all. And yet, because they're both lifelong performers, they immediately have a bond and a connection, and they understand some aspects of each other on some level, because it is a certain type of person who takes storytelling and entertaining and makes it their career. So I love that they just meet and they're immediately like friends and cute together. And he's like, here's my lasso shit. This is what I do. And then he goes, is it hard to dance with all them bananas on your head? And she's like, no. Oh, you want to see my special talent? Here it is. And she does this cool little dance where she balances her purse on her head and drops it into her hand. And it's like these moments of, like, we're both card-carrying members of this secret society. You know what I mean? It's like when you meet another performer and you go like, well, here's the thing I do. And you're like, oh, cool. Here's the thing I do. And it's for my money, it's like the most adorable sequence of the movie. Is there?
It's uncanny how much I'm like what I'm looking at my notes and what you just said, that it makes me so happy that the note that we like both had as the same is about just the joy of sometimes the joy of like storytelling, the joy of like what the Coen brothers are doing. Just sometimes showbiz is just talented people, and everyone else in the film talking about the methods of success or solving the problems in the machine. No, sometimes it's just like, look at that guy fucking lasso. And it's fucking great.
And for a team like Joel and Ethan Coen to do it is even more powerful to say, okay, so we have this sequence where this guy's good at lassoing. You know what? Let's just fucking lock the camera off and have him do it. Like, it deserves the respect of just being viewed as what it is. Wow, this guy does cool lasso shit. That's fun. It's great. It's a simple appreciation of like what humanity has inside of it.
I will ruin it for you a little bit.
Is it CG'd or something?
there is green screen involved. I think it's someone else's hand, so it isn't the actor, but that is someone who's doing it. It's not CG'd or anything like that.
I still argue that their intention is to make you feel the way I described, even if they faked it.
Right.
That's part of what movie making is. That's the point. Yeah.
Precisely.
So we cut to Mannix at home. This is the only time we see him at home. He gives his kids the plane toys. You can tell, like, basically the reason we're here is to establish that, no, he's not lying. Eddie Mannix loves his family. You can tell he genuinely loves his family. You can
tell he's being quiet so they don't wake up, but,
But he looks at them with that look of, like, I'm so lucky to be your father and watch you sleeping.
Yeah.
And
it's one of those, that 50s hypocrisy where it's like, like, you're never going to be home. That's kind of bullshit, but at the same time, like, he still loves his kids.
Yeah. And my dad was like this, even though he wasn't from the 50s, but I get it. It's like the dad who's like, I love you because of the reason I work 100 hours a week is to put food on the table. And you're like, okay, then you love us. Like, got it, check. It's that kind of dad. Where, exactly. Which is a very 50s, 60s type of dad. And she's Miss Pill is a very 50s, 60s type of housewife. I think it's interesting, and it is kind of an interesting like view at normalization of culture in the 50s, that he asks her opinion. He goes, I could take this job that would be more money, I would be home more often, I would see the kids and you more often. And she goes, well, that sounds great. And he goes like, yeah, but... And he just trails off. And then he goes, but what do you think I should do? And she says... well, you know best. You decide. And I'm like, that's a 50s marriage for you.
That's what it is. I also love that in the scene where he was having the second lunch or whatever, the extended lunch with the Lockheed employee. He's like, well, yeah, check with your wife. It's like, it's this setup in the 50s that is like,
you say
everyone
had.
It's like how they were woke.
Yeah.
It was like how they thought agency worked back then, is that, well, your wife has to make that decision, right? It's like the same kind of hypocrisy we make when we do the joke, like, well, she runs the marriage kind of stuff that they, in the 50s they would do. Like, I'm just here. She's the one who's the real taskmaster and stuff like that. And it's just like, yeah, but you also give her no agency and she's learned to just tell people, whatever you think is best.
You're like, yeah, she's my better half. She really wears the pants. And you're like, yeah, but she's not allowed to access the checking account. So not really. You're just saying that.
It's kind of it's kind of well done.
And I love that. I like Eddie Mannix's simple joy because all he exists to do is solve problems. He takes such deep satisfaction when a problem solves itself. Because another notable point in that scene is, he goes, oh, our son, he didn't want to play shortstop. I was supposed to call the coach. I forgot. And she goes, that's okay. He did shortstop anyway. It turns out he loves it. He's switching to shortstop. And he stares into space and he goes, wow, it took care of itself. That's great. Like, he's so grateful that one problem is resolved.
He's like, I love that.
And then
that's
I love,
great. Like, that's all he means.
He's such an interesting character in the subtle things we know about him, because even as by our modern standards, he's a completely absentee father who has like almost no real relationship with his family. He is attentive, like he cares, because they make a point of also saying, she goes, oh, and our daughter passed her Spanish quiz. And he goes, oh, that's good. She was really worried about that. I just love the subtle skill of like having a line that establishes, hey, this guy actually pays attention when his kids tell them about their mundane kid problems. He logs that away.
Right.
It's of equal importance as all the movie studio problems. He cares about his family's problems. He's a 50s dad who's not home, but he cares. And that's who he is.
Yeah. It's an interesting depiction of a
That's it.
Human.
I don't think they're coming down
pro
or con.
Totally true to
They're
50s.
not coming down pro or con on Eddie Mannix. It's just true to life, and it's interesting. So we cut back to Clooney for another beat of he's even more pro-communism now. Like, they're saying stuff, and he's going, wow, that's so true. That's all. I'm going to move us along a little bit.
We cut to their date, which is Lazy Old Moon, which is the date with Hobie and Carlotta.
Great line. Sorry to interrupt,
watching
a great line from the narrator to introduce this scene, who says, as they walk into
yeah.
a movie premiere. They go to witness another weave of gossamer, another movie, another balm for an aching mankind's endless toil. Good line. Good line.
Yeah. And it's called Lazy Old Moon. And it's just one of those singing pictures, singing cowboys. And it's very much reminiscent of Barton Fink, whereas Barton Fink is more of a horror show, and it's showing the horror of Hollywood filmmaking with the ceaseless cavalcade of
stupid, shallow
dailies
bullshit.
that are identical, and it's all the same. They'd show they'd give you some moments about here's how movie, and this is when you saw the movies being made, you saw the performances being rehearsed. We kind of cut in there, in and out throughout the process. Here's the final process. We're at a screening, and Lazy Old Moon, we're watching it all pieced together.
Likes it. They have a good time.
Yeah, loves it. Loves it, and it's just basically
the jokes are
simple,
fucking hacky and dated and shitty.
Yeah, they're hacky as shit. It's all it is just Hobie playing guitar, and this whole time, this old grizzled cowboy man is yelling at the moon, gets angry at there's two of them because he sees the reflection of the moon in the water, tries to attack the moon, and the water's in like a horse trough, and just like slops around in there.
That's funny.
And then he plays a song.
Yeah, it's very slim pickings. But remember, outside in the real world, we're testing hydrogen bombs for the first time give humanity the ability to wipe all life off the face of the earth if we so choose. So isn't it nice to just watch this guy fall into a horse trough? That is very much the point of this movie. And all movies, I think the Coen Brothers would argue. So then back to the real world. Eddie Mannix, I just got to point out, Eddie Mannix is walking up, and I'm sure this is just a true period note, like something that really was true in the 50s, but I fucking wish it was still true. Eddie Mannix is walking up a series of stairs, each of which, the vertical face of each step, has an advertisement on it, like, hey, come to our pharmacy, cough syrups on sale. That's so cool. Malls should still have that. That's rad.
Yeah, it is kind of
We put ads on everything.
It
Why
has a
not
look. It's like a way of making the ads, placing them in the space in a way that looks cool, as opposed to just being like, no, you get your own billboard and it's an eyesore and it's huge because they paid for that amount of your visual real estate.
And it makes staircases like visually used space, which they aren't. Yeah.
Yeah. I'd rather that than a stairwell that looks nice and a billboard right at the top. I'd rather just be like, no, just make that stairwell look cool and add. Like, if we have to live with ads, why not do it that way?
Yeah. Okay, do you mind if I take this scene? I have lots to say about this scene.
Take it.
So, what's his name? It's not Josh Gad or Jonah Hill? Jonah Hill. Jonah Hill. Much like ScarJo, I could give a shit about Jonah Hill. I kind of dislike him being in things. And I'm glad he lost weight if that's what he wanted to do or whatever. I don't know. He's one of these people that I don't understand why does he have a career? Why? I don't understand. Personally, I'm sure he's very nice. I'm very nice, but I don't have a career. So, that doesn't matter. So I'm not saying he's a bad guy, but I have a anti-Hill bias. So coming into this scene in the first time, I was like, this is one of the weakest scenes. Why is Jonah Hill here? This sucks. This isn't funny. I was wrong. I had a chip on my shoulder. I had to get over myself. This scene's very, very funny. So I just wanted to take this scene because I want to apologize to it. Jonah Hill does what he needs to do. I don't think it was hard to do. Jesse Eisenberg could have done it, but the casting of him is correct and their use of him is correct. And the concept of the scene as a sketch is fucking funny. It also made me realize that I think Scarlett Johansson is actually a Mae West analog. Do you think that's appropriate to say? I think it's
combining like terms. I mean, she definitely talks like Anna
Okay, but she also says, is it at the end of the scene, because he notarizes stuff with a pump, like a stamp pump. She says, is it hot squeezing it like that? Which has to be an homage to, you know how to whistle, don't you? Put your lips together and blow, right? Anyways.
Yeah. It's
So
yeah. I mean, there's a lot of sexual innuendo in
Yeah.
the 50s and stuff. That's how they
Because
did
the Hays
everything.
Commission didn't allow you to say the word sex or wiener or anything in a movie. But I do think there's a Mae West comparison being made. So anyway, regardless,
Sure.
it's this long. Again, it's like the Would That It Were So Simple. It's sort of an Abbott and Costello bit. It's just a lot of people talking fast about this adoption scheme they're going to do and having mild misunderstandings that are very humorous. Like she says, how can I trust he'll give back the baby? And they go, oh, I would say that this guy is probably the most reliable person on the face of the earth that I've ever worked with. In fact, for a client of the studio, he took the rap for a crime and did 6 months in county jail for a DUI. And she goes, okay, but you're off the sauce now? And he goes, I never touched the stuff. It was a legal fiction. Like he's trying to explain.
Yeah, he's just
And
clarifying.
she goes, and then Mannix explains, you see, your child needs to be adopted by a person. We need to establish personhood. So Joe here will be the person. And she goes, oh, so you're a legal person. And he goes, that's correct. Sign here. And I love that. As soon as you identify someone as a legal person, they have a document for you to sign. That's just a great joke moment.
Exactly.
Oh, so you're a legal person. That's correct. Sign this.
It's also an Arrested Development joke. He's like, what is the one word that I've used to describe
Professional.
myself?
Yeah.
You know?
He's very...
Like, he's just he's in professional incarnate.
All he'll do is take the rap for you and go to jail for you or whatever you need. But he doesn't want to talk about it.
For
Just
money.
sign the thing and pay him. Yeah.
No, just do the process. This is all procedure.
So again, it's a scene we didn't technically need to see. It's just a bunch of jokes, and we move on.
It's just funny. I also love that they hint at the, you know how we kind of, not double entendres, but there's always like, when like in a movie where it's like a man's a hero, a woman's like a prize, those kinds of movies that, you know, still come out today. It's very much like the hero will do something cool and then have like a witty saying after that doesn't necessarily need to be a pun or sexual innuendo, but it's just to look more cool. You know, they do that at the end of the scene, which I thought was funny, where I forget what she says, but she's basically like, yeah, it must be hard. It's the one that you reference, is like, must be hard stamping it. And
She says, is it hard squeezing it like that? Which is like a version of the Mae West line, but even more surfacey, which I think is the joke. You know what I mean? It's like, it's even less tactful than put your lips together and blow. Is it hard squeezing it like that? And then he says,
just doing my job, miss.
yeah, it's part of the job, miss.
It's part of the job. There you go. Yeah, there's just something about that, like, are they trying to make Jonah Hill look cool?
Or is she attracted to Jonah Hill?
Yeah,
or is
what
she
are they doing?
gently
I don't know.
mocking
It's
him?
just movie making. It's a funny scene. They're just like basically doing a sketch. It's just a sketch.
Yeah.
It's a nice touch.
All right. Eddie Mannix watches some dailies from the Hail Caesar shoot. We realize that Chunk is a terrible actor. At the same time, he hears from his secretary that the kidnappers are being tracked down. I'm going to rush us through, if that's all right.
Yeah.
Then we're at a party scene where we see Hobie on a date with Carlotta after the movie premiere. He does more lasso tricks with a piece of spaghetti. He says that's why he never gets sauce on his spaghetti, so he can do lasso tricks. He says this here's Italian origami, which is a weird mishmash of ignorant things to say.
Yeah.
But
It's wrong and it's weird.
But it's really cute. It's
cute. It's charming.
I believe that in their minds, I'm very much of the opinion that this is, so you know how they've had these sequences that are direct homages to niche film genres that no longer exist, like the Singing Cowboy movie, the Waterworks movie. I think this is a legitimate scene-alike that's supposed to remind you of how rom-coms used to be, like Arsenic and Old Lace, or I could think of it. It happened one night.
Yeah,
like,
Bringing Up Baby or something.
This is what a flirting scene would be like in a 50s film. And even though it's happening diegetically in the world of our film, it's still a pitch perfect impression of one of those scenes. You can tell that they're not attracted to each other, like they're just being friends, but it's cute as fucking hell. So it's just like, It makes you wish that the Coen brothers would like cave and do a Love Actually someday, because I bet they would do a charming as hell like light rom-com. They talk about why they both got into the business. It's revealed that Hobie Doyle, who has been just like fucking stunningly handsome this whole movie, has no teeth, which is an amazing detail to add. Like, again, this juxtaposition of the magic of Hollywood and that it's fake. Like, constantly reminding you, don't forget it's fake, but that's okay. It's great, but it's fake, but it's fun, but it's fake. You know what I mean? It's so interesting. It reminds me of like a Bo Burnham special or something, but this constant juxtaposition of Hobie being cute and charming and then going, oh, I'll show you something funny. I have no teeth and I'm actually hideous looking.
Yeah,
and you're like,
it's
oh,
haunting.
I didn't know that.
And of course, Carlotta is like, that's hilarious. Like
she's like, that's hilarious. Of course you're fake.
So it's
Hollywood
like a safe space, like for everyone.
Yeah.
Like everyone's just having a good time, it seems.
Yeah. Thor and Thessaly come by. I don't care enough to unpack it. It just wraps up their arc. But eventually Hobie sees that Channing Tatum is there with the signature alligator briefcase with his own belt around it. So serendipitously, which I usually consider a weak plot move, Hobie realizes that, what's his name, Burt Gaynor or something, Channing Tatum is in cahoots with the kidnappers. So he follows his car. He follows it all the way back to the Malibu house where the commies are. He walks in the front door and sees Baird sitting there fully having become a communist. And he goes, George Clooney says, whoa, Hobie Doyle, you're a communist too?
Yeah.
Thinking he's coming just by his own accord.
And Hobie's like, the communist is who did it. Like
I love, because he's a cowboy, right? Like,
right.
He's cute and seems nice, but he would probably be a MAGA guy today. So he's like, so it's commies. Like you can tell he's disgusted. Yeah.
Goddamn commies.
And Clooney's like, you haven't been here before? It's Bert Gurney's place. He sings, he dances, he's a communist, he's got taste.
Yeah.
The commies show up with their dog. And they take a... Oh, no, that's
Angles.
right. George Clooney
Angles
says everyone else is
way.
down at the beach.
Yeah, they're in the rowboat by that point.
Yeah, and we cut to them and realize, well, they're not actually at the beach. They're in a rowboat rowing out to this particular point that's marked by the two pyramidal rocks we saw earlier. Again, I would argue that it doesn't matter or probably doesn't have meaning, but it's still cool to see the Coens just do their due diligence of like, let's make these rocks mean something since we're going to throw them in. They're doing their job. They're setting stuff up. They're paying it off. Everything's correct. So they use the rocks to find a secret spot in the ocean they're supposed to be at. And a Russian sub emerges much in the same way as the whale emerged in the earlier sequence. Mm-hmm. It looks really cool. It's a very haunting, like beautifully shot way of having a sub emerge. But basically we realize a couple things. One, the dog Ingalls belong to Channing Tatum. Channing Tatum is apparently an extremely dedicated communist and hater of American capitalism, who is actually going to defect and join Soviet Russia.
Mm-hmm. Did you notice, by the way, two things that I thought were... he leaps from the rowboat onto the Russian sub, and he does the same exact move of when he grabs the pole. It's like literally he's a sailor grabbing a pole.
Yeah, he does his dance choreography as he's defecting.
Yeah,
he's like, defecting. I'm still a professional dancer, though.
Also, by the way, the shadowy figure who's actually standing, like waiting for Tatum to land, is somebody, and that somebody is Dolph Lundgren.
Why?
I don't know, because they're like, it'd be funny if it was Dolph Lundgren.
That's so ridiculous.
Dolph Lundgren's probably like, Coen Brothers movie, hell yeah.
Hell yeah, that'll go on the old IMDb. Hell yeah. So, okay, apparently the Soviet contact is Dolph Lundgren for no reason.
Yes, it is.
But anyway, the professors, let's call them, the disaffected screenwriters, try to donate the $100,000 ransom money to the Soviet cause by tossing it to Channing Tatum. But Instead, his dog tries to join him, and he chooses the dog. Like, rather than let his dog fall into the water, he lets the money fall into the water because they're both coming at him at the same time through the air. So,
which is kind of
a favorite. It's a favorite Coen Brothers maneuver. It's very reminiscent of Fargo.
Yeah.
The money gets buried and no one gets it. It didn't matter.
And it's because the money doesn't matter to Bert. I mean, he has it. And if you had the money, it's what it says about the rich. If you had money, you care about a dog. You wouldn't care about the money. It wouldn't be a question for you. For poor people,
dude,
it might be a decision.
I'm middle class. I'm not rich. I would definitely save my pet rather than grab $100,000.
Yeah, a pet can swim. Money
That's true.
can't.
That dog wouldn't die. He should.
He could just pick up the dog.
Caught them. And honestly, if you ask me, I feel like anyone could have nabbed that briefcase with their oar.
Yeah,
it sank very slowly.
It's neither here nor there. I'm just saying that what the Coen Brothers are doing is showing a ethical monetary dilemma, as opposed in this very silly maneuver. They're trying to talk about empathy versus money.
Yeah, but again, I honestly think this movie isn't the greatest Coen Brothers movie. The jokes are very strong and the craftsmanship is off the charts, but I don't even need to unpack. Like, yeah, I don't know. I feel like they just felt a need to have a ticking clock and to wrap the story up. Like, I don't care about this scene. You know what I mean? I don't care that Bert is revealed to be the communist. The plot super doesn't matter in this one, in my opinion.
I think there is a communist. Like, I think there's themes at large.
Okay. Well, let's get to pedagogy so you can unpack that.
Exactly.
Hobie drops Clooney at a hotel. Clooney takes a cab to the studio in the morning. Clooney explains to Mannix how I met these guys last night. They're really interesting. Did you know? They know the laws. Yeah. They know the laws that dictate everything. And he goes, what do you mean? And he goes, oh, history, society. It's funny just how affable Clooney is while he says, he goes, did you know? I didn't even know this. Did you know that our movies are just part of a sick desire to normalize the status quo of capitalism so that power structures that are in place for thousands of years remain on top? I didn't even know that. Did you know that? He goes, it's like, it's fitting. It's funny because he points out literally what the Coen brothers are doing. He goes, it's fitting we're making this Roman movie, because really Hollywood movies are like the bread and circuses, they call it, for the rabble. So really, he's making the argument. This is the argument. Basically, there's two arguments to be made about film. One is that in the grand scheme of things, it's a complete waste of time to write fiction and enact it. Why are we doing this? And the other argument is, no, there's nothing more important than that, because storytelling is the only way that humans ritually, collectively get on the same page and make sense about what certain aspects of life mean. Like, story is just a word for the organization of reality into an acceptable form, because reality is actually incomprehensible chaos in a quantity that your brain can't process. Like, that's what it is. That's what life actually is. Storytelling is how we survive and how we function. Now, you can tell what side I'm on because I spent more time on that. But the counter argument is, no, it's not, because it's made up. Like, it doesn't apply to real life. It's stupid.
Yeah.
And at its worst, it's a tool of oppressors to create propaganda that supports their regime. And so basically Clooney is just casually saying, oh, you know what I learned on Wikipedia yesterday? Everything we do is evil. I didn't know that. Whatever, but that's interesting.
and he's misquoting Karl Marx when Marx says religion is the opiate of the masses.
But it's cool that it's so thematically tied to what Hail Caesar is, which is a movie saying Jesus is great. Like the ultimate cultural ritual story that our society is built around. Let's combine that with Hollywood, which is the method for delivering these stories in a ritual way to the whole community. And let's all buy in, Spartacus. I am Spartacus. And of course, the negative way to look at that is, well, that's just like real Rome. It's the fucking gladiatorial combat just to keep us busy while you're over here building A-bombs and using special interest groups to hijack the government. And you know what? Both are true. Stories can do either thing.
Right.
But in this movie, Eddie Mannix only buys one side. Eddie Mannix is pro movies. He's pro story. He thinks it matters. And much like if you've read Albert Camus' The Stranger, this is the end scene where this character who's sort of been a closed system opens themselves up and expresses the quintessence of who they are. Because Eddie Mannix is so offended by this that he grabs George Clooney, slaps the shit out of him, way worse than the lady at the beginning of the movie, like repeatedly, comedically, Looney Tunes style slaps him, and says what essentially is the moral of this fable. He says, you're never going to say any of this to anyone. You know what you're going to do? You're going to go out there and you're going to perform this speech, and you're going to do it with feeling, and you're going to do a great job, and you're going to do it because this picture has worth, and you only have worth as long as you serve the picture, and you're never going to forget that again.
Yep.
And he goes, oh, okay, sorry, Eddie, okay.
You're going to do it because you're an actor and that's what you do. Just like the director does what he does, and the writer and the script girl and the guy who claps the slate. You're going to do it because the picture has worth. And if you have worth, if you serve the picture, and you're never going to forget that again. It's just so... It's very classic, like capitalistic Hollywood, but it's kind of trying to sell you the message of like, there's something bigger. This sum is greater than its parts.
Right. But at the same time, like, why wouldn't people who have had the life experience the Coen brothers have had write out an appeal that basically says, well, I like movies. I think they're pretty cool. I think they do have value. It's like, of course you think that. Your whole life is
movies.
Your whole life validates that. I mean, I also think that, but it makes sense that that would be the Coen brothers' moral. You know, if this indeed turns out to be one of their last movies, what else are you going to say at the end of a career like this? But yeah, movies, man, pretty cool. I like movies.
Yeah, that's kind of what it is. They're good and they're bad, just like everything else.
Yeah. So then the plot solves itself because Thoris still wants to run the On Wings as Eagles column, but Mannix explains that Bert was secretly a communist, so if she runs that story, she'll just be seen as a mouthpiece for communist forces, which in the 50s is way worse than being gay, is being pro-communism.
The next scene is...
like, so you can't run the story. Yeah, you go ahead.
Well, just that basically sums that up. The next scene is Baird gives his final monologue. So after, Mannix has slapped him into submission, but and everyone kind of gets eager about it. Like everyone sees like the beauty of it, and we kind of see on the faces of the people who are like the boom operators and the PAs exactly what Mannix just said, that he's doing a good job. He's fucking killing it, but he forgets the last word.
Sorry, just before, very much again like I think Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. Like this is the Leo DiCaprio. I just, after rewatching this, I think Quentin recently watched this.
Yeah, it's very...
I think Once Upon a Time in Hollywood actually owes a lot to Hail Caesar, personally. But, I think it's important to note that like these little glimpses we've seen of the circus, but in a good way. Like, yes, the circus can distract you from hydrogen bomb testing, but the circus can also truly showcase what's amazing about humans, that humans have these incredible talents. And here at the end of the movie, we get to see George Clooney actually show off good acting. That's his talent.
Yeah.
And that's all he brings to the circus is good acting.
The material is a monologue basically saying like an appeal for Christ. It's basically just trying to say, when he looked at me, he saw me for all my sins. He looks at people and he's a completely empathetic soul. He saw the greed in me, but he forgave me. It's that kind of thing. And he's like, there seems to be a secret truth behind everything, and we just can't see it. But we can see it if we just, and then he forgets the word faith, which is hilarious because that's like the word that matters. And since he's an actor, he could forget any word. So the Coen brothers just made it so that he's still not seeing the point.
It's the end of a Simpsons episode where they say something truly insightful and meaningful, and then they undercut it with a joke because it's still a comedy and we got to wrap up. Everyone go home, enjoy yourselves.
It's the main theme of the movie, really.
Right. How funny is it to flub the main theme of the movie, which is... Honestly, the Coen brothers are casting us, the audience, as Jesus, and they're saying like, going to the movies is a kind of religious covenant because it's basically saying, I, a fully formed adult with a human brain that understands the difference between fact and fiction, I'm going to go into this dark room and pretend this shit is really happening. That's the deal. Mm-hmm. It requires a tremendous amount of faith, doesn't it? Because movies are not really happening.
Right.
That's quite a profound statement on film, my friends. It's not bad.
Mannix returns to confessional about which job he should take. Talks about how there's a job that's real easy and there's a job that's real hard, but it feels right. He also confesses to slapping a movie star, which is just funny. The priest says,
slapped a movie star
5 Hail Marys. Like, that's the cost of that. I just thought that was a nice little setup. But because he sees Lockheed as easy and he sees Capital Pictures as hard, but feels right because he enjoys the process and he enjoys what he does. In a single cut, we see him back on the lot. He's back at Capital.
How much did that hit you in the position we're in life and the things we've chosen to do with our lives? Is it wrong to do something because it's easy? Well, what do you mean? Well, there's this job that's easy and there's this job that's hard, but it feels right. It feels like what I should be doing.
Yeah.
Well, God wants us to do what's right. That's my life in a nutshell, man.
Every fucking morning.
Every day.
Morning. Yeah.
Us. All right, so anyway, I also like that as the movie is delivering the moral, Eddie Mannix himself, he goes, well, God wants us to do what's right. And he goes, yeah, I got it. And he goes, because you see, and he goes, no, I got it, Father. I got it. I love that the Coen brothers are like, we're not going to spoon feed you the moral. Eddie Mannix is like, I get it. We're done here.
Such a good, I had to mimic it because it's such a good, Josh Brolin kills it. No, look, I got it. He's like, just, all right, shut the fuck up.
He's like, here's the key to understanding yourself and your life. And he's like, cool. And he's like, do you see what the key is? Yes. Yeah, all right. I got it.
Move the fuck on. It's just one of those.
Can we get over this? Yeah.
It's like his performance is more than the line. It's just really well done by Josh Brolin.
Yeah,
and
Brolin kills it.
And then we end with another.
He returns to work with a new vigor.
And Gambon has a final little narration as we tilt up to the skies, and the last line is more or less Eddie Mannix's story is never over because it is written in light everlasting.
Which then literally the light you see shine into frame as that happens morphs to become the words, which is definitely intentional because they don't credit their movies in this order. No other movie they've done is this way. The light becomes the words, written, produced, and directed by Joel and Ethan Coen. And I just got to say, again, the Tarantino connection. Because for my money, this is a better, more elegant version of the joke at the end of Inglourious Bastards, where he goes, this is my finest work, and it says directed by Quentin Tarantino. This is a better, classier version of that bit.
I love it. I love it so much because it's some people call it humble brag, but I think that's a superficial retelling of that joke. What it really is it's self-deprecating humor because they just blew hot air everywhere, just all across the screen, made it as...
And for these guys...
And then just say, look at us.
Right. Whereas Quentin Tarantino has been like, yes, I'm special. Look at me. I'm great.
He's doing mic drops.
The Coen brothers are like, leave us alone. We just want to make our movies. I love that they were like, this one time, what would be funny? If we came out on stage and we're like, look at us.
Yeah, just like fuck us, right? Fuck us.
That's a funny meta joke about you yourselves, the Coen brothers.
Yeah, I have very little tolerance for people who are like, and then mic drop. It's why I don't get along well with Tarantino films. I don't, even though I do think Inglourious Bastards might be his masterpiece, at the end of that movie saying I think it's my masterpiece, cut to written, directed by Quentin Tarantino, is so what are you trying to say? Are you just trying to say you think it's your masterpiece? Is that all that you have to say?
It is. It's probably his best movie, but that doesn't mean tagging it as such makes it better.
That's just dancing because you made a touchdown. That's all that is. That's doing a cool little touchdown dance. These guys are over here going God, we're so up our own ass for saying that stories are good. No, you're not. Joel, Ethan, you're all right.
And in fact,
it's
right.
You went grandiose for it, but then the reason that you did is to take the wind out of your own fucking sails.
And the only reason they would
great.
do that joke is because they're ending a film that is thematically related to Hollywood artists being up their own ass and the fraudulentness
And now we have
of that.
to do credits.
Right.
Yeah.
Whereas in Inglourious Bastards, he's like, here's an interesting movie about the nature of grief, trauma, history, vengeance, Nazism, racism, fear. Also, at the end, I'm going to throw in a meta joke about how I think the movie came out really well. You're like, that's not really connected to the effort that the movie was making in any way.
No, it's not. No, it's not.
No, it's not. But this is not the Tarantino shit upon cast.
We still got plenty to do, and I know we want to do. We still have a lot of things we want to say. So with Gilding the Lily, I want to go to pedagogy.
Pedagogy.
I want. So here, I'll get out my whole thing, and then you can, respond.
Get your whole thing
say
out,
what you want.
man. I'm excited to see your whole thing brought out.
Okay. So just as a kind of caveat, this came out at Christmas. I just want you to think about that. I can talk more about that later. That's intentional. Okay. So there's something that I read in the Atlantic. There's something I read in the Atlantic that David Sims, who's a columnist, wrote about, and he talks kind of about the offending of the American senses. And he wrote, the priest notes that the Christ is not God, nor God is Christ. You can say that again. The Nazarene was not God, the rabbi interjects. He was not God, the patriarch replies. Part God. So they're all bouncing around faster and faster as Eddie's brow furrows kind of thing. There's unity in division and division in unity. The priest and the patriarch yell at each other in an exchange that could practically serve for the slogan of the last year in American culture. The meta joke, of course, is that much like Ben-Hur, Hail Caesar only depicts Jesus fleetingly and with no personality outside of a general holy glow. The idea that anyone could be offended is as ridiculous as it is sadly plausible. I think that that's interesting. There's the reason why is there's also another scene that we kind of omitted, which is near the end of the film, a second AD who's kind of coming up and asking people, gathering lunches for everyone. We see some feet tied to a crucifix, tied to a cross. And as it's been established in another scene, extras have to sit and stand in one place forever, so we get the sense that it's just an extra. But we also know that that's probably Jesus, and we did get in another scene that they found out this kid named Todd, after Mannix did
who they consider
in
very
the scene with the holy men.
Yeah.
They found out they had a long talent search to find a kid to play Christ.
Trust me, you're gonna love this kid. It won't offend your sensibilities. He's super Jesus-y. Trust me.
So, and then the second AD goes to this Todd, who once again we're not seeing it, just like in Spartacus, just like in the movies dailies of Hail Caesar.
Yeah, I'm sorry to interrupt, but
for
film nerds' sake, I do have to make the correction that you're absolutely right. I think it's probably an amalgam, but I have been conflating Spartacus and Ben-Hur this whole episode. Just so people listening who do know their film history don't think that we don't realize that. Sorry. Go ahead.
Mm-hmm. He asks, the second AD asks, who are you? Now, so Todd is on a cross, and he's clearly in pain, probably from the having to be on a cross for a while, because he's an extra and he's sitting standing. And he goes, Todd? And then he goes, are you extra? Are you an extra or principal? And his response is, I think I'm principal, which is such a great analogy for what I think the Coen Brothers are doing with most of this movie in terms of the religious aspects of it. It's making a satire of the 50s Hollywood, right? And the Coen Brothers are stuck on this dichotomy of mass marketing entertainment and how pointless it is, and exactly like what you were talking about earlier about there's actually a deeper value in pop culture and such. But all it can really do is reach the lowest common denominator, because it's going to constantly take away from itself the ability to have any teeth, to have anything of use, because it makes no statement, because it's so worried about insulting or doing all the mass marketing entertainment things. Basically, the Coen's argument, the general thrust is the Coen's argument is the same. The picture has no worth, no matter how trivial. In 2016, I think that there was in 2016 actually there was a Ben-Hur recreation film. I believe I'm correct about that. There was a Ben-Hur, I think it was just called Ben-Hur, and it just no one remembers it, and it was hardly a hit. Because it was garbage. It didn't try to say anything. It was just rotely doing what Ben-Hur did. I wanted to talk a little bit about movies are the opiate of the masses, because as you hinted at, we kind of, with Clooney's last kind of speech about all men are equals, we are all men, he didn't treat me as Roman or them as peasants, et cetera, et cetera.
It also made me realize that opening sequence with the religious figures talking actually probably is more thematically tied in than I thought, because the nature of what is Jesus, is he one thing or is he multiple things? Is God one thing or bipartite or tripartite? How is the power of God's faith divided between those parts if there is multiple parts to the nature of God? Is all those questions can be asked of film as well. So it's even more tied in than I thought it was.
Yeah,
You're right.
it's no, and that's kind of what I'm setting you up for, is their kind of last blow. It's no accident that Clooney's character is still in his Roman costume as he's being swayed by the communists' talks about everyone being equal, right?
And through that experience, he finds a place within himself to resonate with the final monologue in his movie, where he's supposed to truly recognize the glory of God. It's almost like his coming to realize film matters is his character in the film he's in realizing that Jesus is the shit, is the same as him, George Clooney, Baird Whitlock, realizing that film is the shit,
Yep, and so I want to talk a little bit about the theory of the dialectic, which is something that the Stanford professor repeatedly states, which it's kind of like how history and mankind kind of moves in a single line. And this is kind of a Marx theory that the events of history are at the whim of class struggle and economics.
And the history will repeat itself.
So it's all a straight line that will naturally and eventually end with pure communism, right? That's Marx's argument. However, in this film, this idea is denied because the movie itself is cyclic. It's not linear. It ends with just as the movie starts, kind of with a confessional and kind of with getting back to business. And that's also visually represented by Mannix's watch, I thought, is that time just keeps going and going and going. And usually we see a lot of shots of clocks and watches, and we're very enamored with circles in this movie. If you notice,
they're very enamored with circles always.
That's kind of true, yeah.
I mean the hula hoop, but much like the bowling ball. In fact, if you note, listener, we very much leaned into, there's a reason that if you look at all the Coen Brothers tiles, the logos for each episode, there's a circular motif. We think there's some, in some way, the Coens are obsessed with the story circle, which then deepens to the idea of cyclicality and circles just as a symbol. They seem to be into circles.
Yeah.
But
I think it means something with the circle. Well, you wanted to keep going?
I do, but I'll wait. I'll wait.
I have one last thing I want to get off my chest, which is what I think. So now that those parts are kind of assembled, we have the circle and the line discrepancy.
And the movie's a circle. It begins where it ends.
Exactly. It's cyclic. It's kind of got this rondo format and stuff like that. And that's why I kind of hinted at in the penultimate scene, Whitlock says in his speech as Caesar how Jesus is practically a communist, and then he forgets the last line, or the last word, which is faith. Now, if I had to call what I think the Coen brothers are saying about this, I think that Caesar's saying that there's a truth behind everything, beyond words and light. That's literally what he says in that monologue. We could see it if only we had faith. I think it means only to say that if you have faith that something like God is perfect, then everything works out for you, because whatever you interpret his plan to be, it turns into his path. Do this, do that, don't do that, don't do that. It's all what it was ordained to be. And history is a cycle because humans aren't perfect. They're not. We want to believe that God is perfect. If you believe that God is imperfect, or you believe there is no God, or you believe that history is basically humans running the show, because humans aren't perfect, they rise and they fall, they become loved, then they get hated. And then they get torn down, and new idols become loved and hated and torn down as well. So it is, like Karl Marx says, a straight line in that everything's going to pure communism. Everything is going to this place that we wish to be, where it's perfect, right? And then once we get to that point, we've solved it. But the reason that it's cyclic is because we're putting our bet on the wrong horse. Because we just replay the line over and over and over. It's akin to this Coen's fascination with how something can be a wave and a particle, and how it's hypocrisy in all human enterprises is obvious if you just know where to look. Like, they love the uncertainty principle for the same reason. They love that stuff can both be true. And in this case, it's that something can be a line and it can be a circle. Because
they love that contradictory stuff can both be true simultaneously.
Right,
yeah.
because
a
circle is just a line, but it's connected.
It's also, yeah, time is a flat circle.
Exactly.
But really, a circle is a line if you view it sideways. And I would also say that's the concept of a Cronus and classic infundibulum, is a place where two contradictory things can be true simultaneously, which connects this podcast canonically to Kurt Vonnegut's, which I wanted to do before we wrapped up.
we wrapped up, yeah. So I think what they're kind of saying, for my money, is that belief is the opioid of the masses, and that like if they're nihilists, like a lot of people accuse them to be, or agnostics or atheists or whatever, it's because they just believe that there's no perfect belief,
or that
everything's a little broken.
The actual fabric of the universe is either unknowable or illusory in some sense, in the Buddhist sense almost, so that it's not bad. Like, it's not hollow or disingenuous to believe in things that you don't know are true, because at the end of the day, you don't know anything is true. Yeah. Like, what is life? What is it to perceive things and be trapped in this identity for such a brief period of time, and then be who knows where with what identity that may dissolve or not? Why now? Is this the only universe? Like, at the end of the day, we're so awash in a sea of chaos that
it's so very complex.
I truly believe as a human being living this life I live, I can't ever know shit. Like, I'm never gonna figure any of this shit out. It's completely beyond our capacity. So
would that it were so simple, you know?
Would that it were so simple.
Eddie,
would that it were so simple. Would that it were.
It's complicated.
It's complicated.
So, just as my final thought, Eddie Mannix. So when they say Eddie Mannix's story is never over, and it's quote written in light everlasting, I think that's two things. I think it means that the tale is written into the fabric of the, like all tales are written in the fabric of the universe, and altogether its purpose is undetermined, just like you said, and its solution may just be imperceivable to us forever. But also, light is literally the ink of motion pictures, so it also is saying that movies are forever. Probably more correct to say that stories are forever. That's it.
Yes, and also that light. Like, did you watch Third Rock from the Sun?
Yeah, a bit. That was so long ago.
Okay. Do you remember by any chance the special episode where John Lithgow has to give a eulogy for a human and he doesn't understand?
Oh, absolutely not. I'm sure it was good, though.
It's super good because at the end he gives a eulogy where he says, like, so-and-so was just a collection of carbon atoms and water, but arranged in such a unique way that's so rare to find in the universe that he could do things like walk and talk and digest and fall in love with people and come to hate people and forgive people. And then he died, and the material that comprises him will someday be absorbed by the Earth's sun and become nothing but light and be emitted out as a wave across the totality of the entire face of the universe. And everyone weeps, and you're like, that is legitimately an amazing eulogy.
Yeah.
And of course the joke is all the alien family members are like, that's like a joke eulogy on our planet. Like, you gave the we become stardust eulogy. That's fucking so weak. And he's like, right, but humans are dumb and they fall for it. And I just think
that's great.
I think this moment it's a great moment for a sitcom. Like, holy shit, it blew my mind when I was a kid watching Third Rock. But I think this is a similar moment where they're like, everything is light. As you said, matter boils down to the uncertainty principle, and everything is vibrations of light, essentially vibrations of energy, which is just a name for what we perceive as light in its purest form. So I think there's an appeal to that, and I think that also ties in nicely with Vonnegut, because one of the wisest things Vonnegut ever said was that it's amazing how insignificant something seems. Like, let's say something that felt important. Let's say the day your child was born or whatever. It's interesting how insignificant that can seem when you consider that the universe is infinite and time is infinite and it doesn't matter, right? You know, like on the aggregate, who gives a shit?
Right.
You're trapped in this tiny atmospheric envelope of one planet. But then on the other hand, it's interesting to think that as far as we can tell, if time exists substantively, the day your child was born happened, and it was so specific that it is a unique event, and it always will have happened. And that also cannot be discounted or taken back or overwritten ever, as far as we know. And like, both sides of existence are very fascinating.
Yeah, I mean, that's the half full, half empty kind of taking of it. I remember getting in arguments with people about like me being agnostic or an atheist, like saying like, how do you care about anything, you know, because if it all doesn't matter. And I always go like, no, like the thought that the universe is so vastly large and it's so out of scale to our understanding doesn't make me feel small as much as it makes me feel kind of large, that we're so fucking unique.
We're free, yeah.
And we're able to do what we want with our little space, our little notepad in the universe. And it's like, that makes me feel big. And people don't understand that. And I don't understand why people don't understand that. I feel like the Coen Brothers understand it.
I do too. And I feel like Neutral Milk Hotel guy. That's there's a line in that song that, like, I never hear this elucidated in art as frequently as I'd like, but I think about it all the time. You know that Neutral Milk Hotel song where he says, the main thing is how strange it is to be anything at all.
To be anything. Yeah.
Why should there be a universe? Yeah. Why should there be something versus nothing? It's kind of miraculous.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't remember what that one's called, but it's the one that goes G, C, D,
it's
C.
called In the Airplane Over the Sea.
That's it. Yeah. That's the one.
I hope that dude's doing better, man. I know that band stopped releasing albums because he had like a nervous breakdown. I know how that goes.
Have no clue.
I hope he's doing better. Neutral Milk Hotel guy, you're great. Hope you're doing good. The only other things I have for pedagogy, what do I have here? Mention that storytelling is a rubric that we use to deny the fact that life is random chaos. I feel like we organically touched on that already.
Yeah, story's a combination of elements into a structure.
Yes, and the base thing that you're taking on faith is that such a thing as structure exists or is attainable. I think it's interesting that people don't question often enough that the fundamental difference between any movie you've ever seen or book you've ever read and how things go in a certain order and at some point they wrap up. Now think about your own real, unfiltered experience of this life as it has passed over you. Isn't it just a bunch of random shit at random in almost any sequence? Sorry, but like all these story threads are going on, and then randomly you're depressed today, then you're happy the next day, but you find out a family member died. Then everything's fine, you get in a car accident, but you unexpectedly get some money. Like, life is just random, dude.
Yeah.
And I think storytelling is very much the collective monkey sphere of humanity's way of saying, right, but let's all pretend it's not, because otherwise I won't be able to like plan my day out.
Yeah.
And that's the value storytelling and the faith in storytelling provides to humanity. And I also wanted to say, no, that's all. We touched on everything, which is good.
Yeah.
We got to wrap this up.
What you said just reminds me of that Richard Feynman quote where he's like, it's not that like nature is complex. It's not that complex. It's a simple series of like it's a series of very simple phenomena. Like,
but there's
like
a lot of them.
But there's just
That's
a lot
all.
of it. That's why it's
just a lot.
complex. It feels complex. There's just a lot of it. And it just reminds me of like, yeah, that's kind of what's going, like, that's the feeling that's behind most of like movies. That's why I don't think I'm pushed away when they do stuff like Serendipity. Like, just, and then suddenly this happens and it's like, that's unrelated. Yeah, but like Big Lebowski is about like them, like a group of thugs. The reason it happens is a group of thugs go into the wrong house. They find the wrong Lebowski. It's always created out of nothing. And it doesn't feel weird or bad or serendipitous in a bad writer way, where it's like I see on TV on like The Watchmen or something like that. Like, we're just like, oh, and then we're going to do this random like fucking narrative excuse of why she's dead now or she isn't dead. It doesn't feel at the whim of the writers just trying to get a rise out of me. It feels like it's part and parcel to the narrative piece as a whole, and how it plays with the structure, and how the themes that are at play are almost always about organizing all the details of things in a way that makes sense to somebody, doesn't make sense to everybody. It's just how the world operates. Some people make the world, like, everyone makes the world and views the world in the way that they want to.
Right. We're all born drowning in an ocean full of shipwrecks with a bunch of detritus around us, and all you can do is try and build whatever detritus happened to be around you into a sensible like scaffolding to survive upon. Yeah. And so you do, and God bless you.
Yeah,
right? Like,
and I
no
see
shade.
why people see that as bleak. You don't have to. I don't know. I'm hoping that that's what the Coen Brothers do, because they always end it with like kind of a positive image. No Country may be an exception, but even then, they kind of like tip their hand a little bit and say like, yeah, but it just happened.
And they're living in the world of another author, so I believe they probably have enough respect to be like, again, no one's right, no one's wrong, everyone has different perspectives. So if we're going to go ahead and adapt Cormac McCarthy's worldview, let's do honor to what Cormac McCarthy thinks. So I'd argue like No Country probably more represents Cormac McCarthy philosophically than the Coen Brothers. Yeah.
I think that's good.
Yeah.
All right.
I have no howdy-do-dads.
The only thing I want to notice is there was a line that Deacon said in an interview that I thought was beautiful. So, quickly, Hail Caesar was the first movie that Deacon shot. He's back, baby. He shot on film since True Grit in 2010. The Coens themselves said that of the previous movie, Inside Llewellyn Davis, it would probably be their last use of using film instead of video. But Hail Caesar was so like classic Hollywood that film kind of became an obvious choice. So even as they were like still trying to say like, yeah, we're going the way of video, everyone's going the way of video.
But why wouldn't we?
Buster Scruggs was shot on video, but they're just like, come on, it's Hail Caesar's got to be on film
that way.
And so Deakins agreed to give it one more try, because by this time he's doing Skyfalls. He in his opinion has been very vocal about like, it's only recently, but we gotten to the point that digital is just better. And Deakins agreed to give it one more try, and he quote, and this is why Deakins is so awesome, just look at the wisdom in these words. I don't mind, he recalled saying, I'll shoot it on a cell phone if you'd like. Ultimately, film proved a limited in palette due to the narrowing choices of stocks and processing options in the wake of digital cinematography. He doesn't, and then it goes on to say that he didn't recall encountering those kinds of problems on earlier projects, but, quote, it makes me nervous now. I wouldn't want to do that again, frankly. I don't think the infrastructure's there. So it's just him. Once again, it's not like Tarantino going like, but there's just something about film.
There's something about the sound of vinyl.
And he's like, yeah, that's true. You can create that. And that's why we chose to shoot Hail Caesar with film. It's an obvious choice. But he's also saying, you have to deal with the making of the movie. And if there's problems, things like narrowing choices of stocks and processing options, and there's this other tool that's cheaper, more effective, and able to do things that the limited palette of the other thing wouldn't, I'm always going to choose that one. I don't want to choose the film because it would make me nervous. It's just very wise and tempered, and like it's, of course, the main cinematographer that the Coen Brothers would collaborate with, because those guys are always tempered. So Yeah, it's shot on film. Another good bit about Mary Zophres, who's the costumer in almost all their films, is it required 2,500 costumes, including 170 Roman extras, 120 Israelites, and 45 slaves. And about 500 of the costumes were custom made. And they didn't have a big budget, so that meant that Mary Zophres had to apparently do some of the stitching herself as the costume design budget bloomed. Just kind of, if this is like it's not their last film, but if this is their last like main to cinema release, the fact that one of their main collaborators, Mary Zophres, working in she's one of the best in the business, has to sew things herself because they're all just trying to make the film work, is just a testament. You know, it's not George Lucas, where it's just like, let's make everyone's life really easy.
No, their team.
They'll do what they need.
Everyone on their team clearly loves the Coen brothers and loves them as artists and their unique vision, and wants to seriously be a part of actually digging into the work and enjoys doing it.
Yeah. It's a
Working
kind of collaboration.
On a Coen Brothers film, I imagine, reminds you why you got into the business.
Yes.
You know?
Fact alone.
They really enjoy the work.
That fact alone, even though I'm probably reading more into it than, it is, it almost makes me want to cry. As a director, to hear those kinds of things, that Mary Zophres being who she is.
To hear that Mary Zophres would be working a sewing machine to get it right, rather than
to save money.
I think at this point in her career, there would just be PAs doing that because the budget is whatever.
And she's just I went over budget. Okay, well, I'll just do the stitching myself. Makes me go, fucking A.
Yeah, it's rare in this industry where people who have truly made it still do the work themselves.
Yeah, apparently so.
Even John Williams, at this point, farms out composition to a bunch of people
why not?
who know
You're getting
how to
older.
compose exactly like John Williams. Yeah.
I get it.
Yeah, that's all.
That's all for me.
We went from A to Zophres, and now the show's over.
Mm-hmm. What do you want to do now?
Oh, also I wanted to point out John Daly appears as the policeman in the beginning of this movie.
Oh, yeah.
Which officially connects Coen Brothers to Comedy Bang Bang. So the CBBS have finally connected.
They've connected. Their peens have touched.
As have the BBCs. Yeah, you took the joke I was going to go for. All right.
All right.
Yeah, and the BCCs.
Do you want to do a quick ranking? Okay. We've gotten some requests to do that. Should we make a different episode for that? Or I said we would, so let's do it real quick.
Let's do it quick. This is taking too long, but let's do it. Yeah, let's do it quick.
How do you want to do this? Do you want to go, from last place to first place?
Well, first of all, thanks everyone for listening. It's been fun, etc., etc. Look, if you don't know we love you by this point, you haven't been paying attention. And now that we're almost 3 hours into this episode about Hail Caesar, probably the lightest, most inconsequential Coen Brothers movie, other than maybe Lady Killer.
I just can't say it goodbye, though. I don't want to.
I know. It's also, I do think it's a mark against it. I'm mildly annoyed by the inside baseball nature of movies like The Artist, La La Land, and I think Hail Caesar falls into that. It's
Marriage Story.
Yeah, it's kind of lame at the end of your career to make a movie about how great Hollywood is, because you're like, look, obviously you love Hollywood. It's your whole life and career. Make another movie about, Fargo or whatever. But anyway, I just wanted to shit on the Coen brothers on the way out, because that's what this podcast is all about. And you do the hokey pokey, you turn yourself around. Let's rank the movies now.
Nice.
We'll go 1 to 18 or however many. How about that? And we'll say a couple
I forget,
sentences
but they're all
about
listed
why.
in front of me. Should we go? So we're gonna go from what our last place is to our first place, right?
Oh, you're right. That's way better for tension.
That's way better. Yeah.
Okay, so you want to go first or second?
I'm gonna go first, and Lady Killers.
Lady Killers is your last place.
Yes.
My last place is The Man Who Wasn't There.
Ooh.
Are we speaking of why, or are we just ranking?
We can. We can.
I
think
mean,
it'll take us a few before we can really start to talk of like why you put that there or that. So I don't need to talk about it every time.
I would argue that if you want to know the why of it all, listen to that episode. Like you get 1 to 3 hours of the person expressing how they feel about that film.
Yeah.
I could just rank them, honestly.
Yeah. I thought. I found I surprised myself with it when I had to really go like, all right, this versus this one.
Okay, but I'm saying for a bunch of them, I don't have any opinion
I don't need to explain
that I didn't explain fully in the episode.
Yeah. I think the only explanations are when it's completely out of left field.
Yeah.
I don't find Man Who Wasn't There at the bottom of the list
being like shocking. Okay.
Shocking.
Yeah.
So.
Okay. So, well,
2.
hold on. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. There's 18 total.
Yeah.
So number 17.
And you included
Buster?
What's the name? Buster.
Yeah. There's 18 total. So, okay, we just said number 18's. Now number 17, Abe.
17. Intolerable Cruelty.
Fuck you.
Mm-hmm.
Fuck you, dude. I'm upset with you. Lady Killers.
Okay. You're upset
God
with me.
damn you. How dare
like Ocean's
you.
11, they're saying they can bank on actor charisma and good like
Ocean's
editorial
11
flow.
is garbage compared to
It makes your movie go.
Intolerable
They're not
Cruelty.
wrong. It makes your movie go. The charisma and the editorial flow of that movie is impeccable. It's just at the bottom of my list.
16.
The Ballad of Buster Scruggs.
God, I hate you now. Is this how we want to end the show, as enemies?
Yes.
Blood
Yes.
Simple. And then
Ooh, well.
only because the elements are so spare because of what they were working with. I still think their talent is on display. All right, go ahead. 15.
Blood Simple.
I'm hoping we'll match up at some point. My 15 is Hail Caesar.
Okay.
14.
Okay. The Man Who Wasn't There.
All right, good. Okay, so as brackets, we're very similar, but they're like mixed up.
Yeah,
here and
we
there.
just.
Yeah.
I think that's how it was always going to be. There's nothing about this really surprising.
My 14 is the Ballad of Buster Scruggs.
Okay.
13.
That makes sense.
This will be the
Hail Caesar.
Okay, good. Okay, this all makes sense except I think Intolerable Cruelty is way higher. That's the one disagreement so far.
Okay.
This is the first one I said I think you might react to emotionally. My 18, 17, 16, 15. My 13.
This is when I started having to make like
Tough
rough
choices.
decisions.
Me too.
You know,
My number 13 is Miller's Crossing.
13. I thought 13 was. I thought Miller's Crossing. Or I thought we're on 12 right now.
No, we're on 13. I'm sure.
Which one did
Silence
I miss?
from Abe. 18, the man who was for me. 18, the man who wasn't
Ladies
there.
Killers.
17, Lady Killers. 16, Blood
Intolerable
Simple.
Cruelty.
15, Hail Caesar. 14,
Scruggs.
Ballad of Buster Scruggs. 13, Miller's
Blood
Crossing.
Simple. Man Who Wasn't There. Hail Caesar, I guess, is 13 for me.
Okay. 12 for me is True Grit.
Miller's Crossing.
Damn it, I want to sync up. I want our octagonal peens to lock together.
I know.
Number-
We're never going to lock down. We're never going to lock down.
Number
It's
11
not
for
gonna
me, Intolerable Cruelty.
happen. Burn After Reading.
That's okay. I forgive you. Number 10, Barton Fink.
Ooh, that's fine. True Grit. So we're doing this do-si-do.
That's
Like
what I
every
mean is-
3 we are tied up now.
Our
But we're not
overall
always
opinions
we're never
are
the same.
though. Yeah.
Like it'd be surprising to me if we were both like number 5 and we both have the same movie.
Yeah.
That would be weird to me at this point.
Number 9.
Well, as closer we get.
Burn.
Number 9,
Yeah.
Barton Fink.
Burn After Reading.
Yep, it's happening.
It's happening, dude.
Our peens are slowly touching.
Number 8.
You're gonna hate me.
Huh.
A Serious Man.
Oh. I'm really upset.
I know.
I'm
I know.
upset.
I can't believe
really
you have
upset.
Intolerable Cruelty and I can't believe you have Intolerable Cruelty still here, right? Or have you
What?
named it yet?
No, my
You named when was yours Intolerable Cruelty?
Well, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 11 isn't tall for me.
Okay, it was 11. That's what I thought.
Whew. My number 8 is Raising Arizona.
Ooh.
Yeah, because it looks like it was shot
7?
on video a little bit in a way that I think dates it.
Yeah, A Serious Man.
I think
the film understands crisis to the most minute level, but it's not about stakes, and it's not about how life actually is. That takes it down a notch to me. Like, A Serious Man is trying to say, well, I don't know.
It's poetic,
I don't want to talk
magical
down.
realism.
If
It's
you're in the
not
top
grounded
10 of a
realism.
Coen Brothers movie, there's nothing I'm going to talk shit on. But like the ones before it are doing so clearly what I just think, like, at this point now, they're doing like the best version of the Coen Brothers, and there's like 8 Coen Brothers
Rolling
films
my
or
eyes
7
so
Coen
hard.
Brothers films.
You're completely wrong. Okay. Number 7.
The Hudsucker Proxy.
No Country for Old Men.
Oh, wow. That is an upset, sir.
Is it? I think
I
No
believe on the No
Country-
Country for Old Men podcast, you said you were going to probably put it like 1 or 2.
I've watched it 3 more times since we recorded that podcast, and while I find it very monolithic and interesting for the ways in which it disrupted the forms of storytelling that are popular at this time in human history, I think it's overrated overall. Yeah, I ended up thinking...
I think you're making hot takes just
Well,
for hot
my
takes,
point
my
is, I think there are 6 better Coen Brothers movies, and you're about to
That
hear
is
what they
the
are.
argument.
Yeah.
That is the setup.
I
yeah.
think it's very, 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 very good and vital as a piece of art, but I think there's 6 things the
Ooh.
Coen Brothers did that are even better.
Ooh. All right.
All right, number 6.
All
What do you
right.
got?
Raising Arizona.
Oh, brother, where art thou?
Oh, well, it's getting less and less because now we're like top 6, so it's
Yeah,
like
top 5, baby.
they're basically the same now.
Top 5. Number 5.
Inside Llewellyn Davis.
Inside Llewyn Davis.
We got one.
We touched.
We got one. Number
We
5.
touched. Inside Llewyn
Okay,
Davis
so-
is number 5.
So No Country is
Confirmed.
out for you. So I still have. Okay, I want to do this. Did you say 5 yet?
Yeah,
we
Inside
said
Llewyn
it.
Davis. So, we're
So
on 4.
here's what I want to do. For me, what's still available, and I'm in no particular order.
People not,
No?
It's too accessible. That ruins the surprise. Let's go fast so people aren't predicting what we're going to do.
Okay.
All right, number 4.
God, I'm excited. Fargo.
Hudsucker Proxy.
Yep.
Probably, in my opinion, the most underrated Coen Brothers movie. It bombed at the time. I don't understand why. It's a goddamn
It got
masterpiece.
Academy Awards.
Yeah, but
Well,
financially. All right.
Can.
Their career continued, so I guess what am I bitching on their behalf about? Number 3,
Oh, brother, where art thou?
Fargo. Number 2,
No Country for Old Men. I can't believe I know what it is.
The Big Lebowski. Because we're comedians, I think it's
Wow.
important that a comedy rank high.
Number 1.
Number 1. What's your number 1?
The Big Lebowski.
A Serious Man. And
Wow.
what an interesting twist that this podcast that seemed so much centered on our friendship at the last second would ruin our friendship.
Yeah, right.
I will talk to you never. Goodbye.
Yeah.
End of series.
Wait, we have to make another web show. We have to make another podcast, though.
Oh, shit. Okay, but
How
yeah.
are we going to do that?
I believe I said in the Serious Man episode it's a strong contender for my number 1, and I remain in that place. I really
Serious Man-
I love magical realism. Like, my favorite book of all time
It's
is 100
so
Years
good.
of Solitude. So, like, I don't need it to be realistic. I like that the tornado comes and it makes no sense. I like that he gets cancer and it makes no sense. It's fine to me because I feel like in that movie, the Coen brothers transcended reality and they're like, look. We all know movies are fake, so I'm God. I'm just telling you a sequence of images. You're supposed to derive the meaning from it. It's a parable. You don't have to pretend this really happened. What the fuck are we doing here? It's a movie. Of course it didn't really
Right.
happen. Boom.
Yeah.
What's
and
your
it's not
argument?
about stakes, as I was saying. Well,
Yeah.
I mean, the biggest. I'd rather talk about like the big, which A Serious Man is definitely in that. The biggest upsets, like I have A Serious Man at 8. You have at 1. You have Oh Brother pretty early, and I have that. It's still at 3. But more or
I
less,
have it at
we're-
6.
Yeah, that's not too far, but that's like the bigger. Like it's such a fun movie to me. But
Biggest
yeah, Serious
upset
Man.
on me is that No Country fell a lot in my esteem.
Yeah, so that's what I was going to say about it. If that was an upset to me that you put No Country so low as well. And the same kind of thing happened to me for A Serious Man.
Mm-hmm.
When it came out, I lost my shit. I watched it a second time. I had to buy the Blu-ray. Lost my shit. Watching it with the critical eye of like doing the series, I don't know if it's not that I lost the zest for it. It's just like the mechanizations that were at play are done in a lot of their other movies. So it didn't feel like it was adding new things. It just was like more polished. And I don't know what about me thinks that like, yeah, but there's like, even though The Man Who Wasn't There didn't do like the uncertainty principle aspects as well as A Serious Man, it's not a thought that was like fresh to me at the time.
Yeah, I would argue that The Man Who Wasn't There was their attempt to grapple with nihilism. And then they realized that they didn't quite nail it. So they looked for the book that they thought most represented what they were trying to say, and they found No Country, and they made that. And then they went on to make Serious Man, where they tried again to do their version of what they meant, and it finally came out perfect.
It really
But
is.
it is iterative.
Impressive.
Yeah.
That's why I put it at 8 though, and I had the comment about like there's like 7 types of films because like Hudsucker Proxy, Raising Arizona, Inside Llewellyn Davis, Fargo, like these are all unique types of films that the Coen Brothers make. None of them feel like another.
I love how Fargo for everyone is like, it is like Peter Stormare in Fargo. It's like the Looney Tunes where the dog and fox just check in and out of work. Fargo, everyone's like, yeah, it's one of the best movies ever. Salute as you pass. Nothing to say about it. It's just a fucking hammer dropping into the scene.
It feels like a No Country rehearsal to me.
Yeah.
Like visually they put down their
rehearsal.
mark here. It's the movie that made them.
I like Fargo better than No Country.
Yeah, I thought No Country was better than Fargo.
All right. Well, we hate each other.
I think it just hit me in in a way that none of the others did.
You're
It's
such a
structurally one of the
Joel,
most
dude.
interesting.
I'm
Dude,
Ethan, and you're such a Joel. That's the thing.
You think you're Ethan? You think you're
You
Ethan?
think you're Ethan?
You get the fuck out of here.
That makes me chuckle in an Ethanish way.
Yeah.
All right.
We're such nerds, dude. We are such nerds.
Yeah, we're embarrassing ourselves. We
Well,
should get out of here.
I don't want to talk about it anymore. I'm just glad we did it because they
Yeah.
wanted us to do it. I don't care. Ranking is the least interesting
Ranking's
thing
pretty
to me.
stupid.
Yeah. I mean, it's fun. But
no, but
other
it's
than
like,
that-
you know how people are like, well, it's like apples and oranges. And they say like, well, why would you compare Fargo to Big Lebowski, right? I would
Yeah.
also say, why would you compare any unique piece of art to any other unique piece of art? It just is what it is. It's whatever your experience was with it. It's almost pointless. Ranking.
Yeah, it's an old
pure
and
ranking.
That's like an old hat at this point to say, and at the same time, the number one things that do well, in terms of like movie criticism is like, we ranked the top 10
Yeah.
Coen Brothers. It's like, oh fuck.
Well, that's because
That's what
Cracked
you're doing with your
established the
time?
listicle pattern, and now everyone's addicted.
Yeah, I understand.
We're sorry, guys.
It's a stupid thing.
Cracked but there are like blocks of data metrics that track how Crack's popularity made other sites adopt top X whatever, and now we're stuck with it as a format. I mean, you could trace it back to David Letterman, but whatever. Let's get into going away. I have other shit
let's
to
just
do.
do the. I don't want to do any of this anymore. Let's kind of. So the final thing we promised before we leave is we wanted to do kind of a teaser announcement because now that this is kind of ending,
It's ending. It's over.
We still want to do a deep dive. We've been saying that forever. I think there's never going to be a time in Small Beans that we're not like maybe on hiatus here or there on it, but like if the schedule aligns in a bad way, but ultimately we're always going to want to do a deep dive that's Michael and I, and I think that we've determined what we want our next one to be, and I think we want to make the announcement. Do you want to make the announcement, Michael?
Yeah. Yeah. We're doing Kings of Kennedy, right? All the works of Jamie Kennedy.
No, you fucking already.
Oh. Yeah, we'll be doing a show following this show called Kings of King, which will cover eventually, every filmed or televised piece of work that is an adaptation of something written by Stephen King, the most adapted storyteller of all time. Because basically, we discussed other directors that we admire and think are auteurs who hit at every level, like P.T. Anderson or your Kubricks or whoever you want to talk about, Herzog. But in every case, we feel like we already did the best ones. Like I honestly do think the Coen Brothers are the best of anyone we could talk about at that level. So we were trying to think of a different angle on storytelling that deserves unpacking. And we also love horror. We don't get to talk about it enough. And we realized, Stephen King has a very special place in the storytelling pantheon of humanity. Obviously, he mostly writes words on a page, but he storytells in a very accessible way that in an almost Spielbergian way has become the grammar of our storytelling, like shared collective consciousness. And as I've already said several times, as a result, is the most adapted into film of anyone who's ever put pen to paper. So it's going to be different than this one because you don't have that quality bar, right? We're going to cover things that adapt Stephen King stories well, and we're going to cover instances where the movie fucking sucks, and we're going to unpack why the movie fucking sucks. But we're generally going to try to do so in such a way that's illuminating about the filmmaking process and human nature and all the kind of shit you've come to expect from us. So yeah, that's the one, King of Kings, about the works of Stephen King as they appear in film and television. It won't be chronological.
Yeah, and I think it won't be chronological. We're just gonna kind of pick them at whim. That's kind of the goal. That's the plan now. I'm hoping it's going to be good because I think coming from the directorial side and you coming from the writer's side, not that we'll inhabit those positions forever into perpetuity, just that I think that that's a good mix of like trying to say we're not going to necessarily read all the books. If we've read them, we'll talk about them. People who have read the books, feel free to learn us on it. But ultimately, we're going to talk about the films, and we're going to talk about how the story, the vision behind the storytelling, and what makes Stephen King tick. Is part. That's basic part of the.
Yeah,
the
don't
thing.
read. You don't need to read. We won't have read that.
I mean,
it's about the filmed material.
It's about the film material.
I'm actively
sometimes
encouraging you not to
one
read.
of us will have
please.
read it. Yeah. You guys don't need to read.
Don't read. Don't read. Just
don't
listen.
read.
Listen to things.
Just listen.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I also like it. I like this choice because the acronym for it is KOK.
And that's A-OK, as far as I'm
And that's
concerned.
A-OK.
Cock is A-OK. You heard it here last and first. And Stephen King is the next focus. And like Gabe said, we'll pick based on sort of what we want to teach you that episode or what topics we want to unpack. So there's no way for you to predict what to watch ahead of time. If you go to our Patreon, patreon.com/smallbeans, we might start broadcasting ahead of time what we're going to cover, I think, so people can can pre-watch
But
if they want.
But we try to make this as much as we could in terms of once per month. So just so everyone knows, expect about at some point soon, about once a month, we're going to bring you some cock.
And if you enjoyed this look at the Coen Brothers, please. That's all. Good job.
We did it. So fucking long.
Oh, I guess. I remember. Go to iTunes and give us 5 stars and a review.
That would be great. That would be great.
It would be great. I found out it really helps us get exposed to new listeners, so it's great.
It is.
Yeah.
Anything you guys can do in terms of that, just help us out.
Please. I'm dying here. All right.
Dying. All right. Well, that's it. Jesus.
Okay.
I'm I can't even see straight. That was so long.
That
It's
was longer than I thought
3
it
hours.
would be. I'm
Of
at
course.
2:59 and a half.
Yeah, exactly.
Let's hang out until we're at 3 hours.
Yeah, that's a good call
And then
because
we'll
then we
stop it.
then we can say it.
Then we can say our finale was 3 hours. I got 18 seconds left.
Although, when I come in and edit this, it's going to be ruined.
So should we go to 3 hours and 10 seconds?
3 hours and 10. I think we're going to probably cut out more than 10 seconds.
I can't wait. I can't sit here for 5 minutes.
No, I mean either. I have nothing to talk about.
All right.
Either.
Well, then people just know that as of this recording, my timestamp is currently 3 hours and 10 seconds.
Yeah,
and if you're not seeing that, that's your fucking problem. We went for 3 hours.
Maybe I'll just run some ads.
Please,
I don't know.
If the cut ends up not being 3 hours, put in any random soundscape or ambience recorded off Freesound to fill it to 3 hours. Can we do
that's
that?
a great idea.
Okay, great.
That's a great idea.
All right.
I'm going to do it even if it doesn't.
Yeah, so everyone enjoy whatever sound Abe decided to put at the end here, and we'll see you next time.
What the fuck was that? What is that shit? Whoa! Whoa! It's a volcano! Lava is flowing straight for me! Oh my god! Is that a robot? A robot is fighting an enormous beast! This is insane! I wish Michael were here to see this! The robot and the beast are fighting! Oh, he killed the beast! Oh god, some crazy bugs are coming out of the beast! Oh, the robot, he's eating it! He's eating it! There's cavemen! They're coming out of the forest! Oh, there's firing arrows at him! Holy crap! Is that a time machine? Whoa! Oh, this is a time machine! I don't know why I know, but it's clearly a time machine. Oh, I think something's gonna come out. This is taking a long time. Who is that? Wait, who is that? That's Joel and Ethan Coen. You're Joel and Ethan Coen. Oh my god, I'm your biggest fan. What? Hey, Joel! I'm shot! Joel and Ethan Coen have shot me!